Oh,
Welcome, everyone.
good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. If you are here for the Looking Ahead, Living with HIV Reunion Project National Virtual Meeting, you are in the right place. If you are looking for Game 3 of the Dallas Mavericks Boston Celtics series, you are on the wrong channel.
No, we didn't bring up the Mavericks.
Whoops.
Hello, who was that? Curtis. Curtis in the chat.
Good morning. Good
Hey,
morning.
Good morning.
Helen Zimba, behave.
I didn't bring up the Mavericks.
I'm not sure if anyone will.
They say hello from Seattle, Washington. I'm in the chat.
Yeah, hello. I'll do this officially later, but I am Larry Bryant, Senior Program Manager with the Reunion Project. As you come in, share your hellos, where you are, where you're zooming in from in the chat. I am here in beautiful Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, awaiting some rain. What else is new? Also awaiting summertime. Who here is ready? I heard someone say earlier that they were ready to go to some water, near water. Who's here ready for the beach?
That's me, Larry. This Janice from
I know
Janice
you
Shirley
are.
from Charlotte. I want to welcome everyone too.
Hey Larry, this is Wanda from Winston-Salem. I'm ready for the beach.
Yes. Everyone, shout out your beach, your favorite beach in the chat too.
A tropical island anywhere.
Hey, Miss Wanda. Two Wandas. Hey, y'all.
Hey.
We're gonna wait about 2 more minutes, let more people come in, get settled. And we're gonna do some introductions and get started. Thank you all for joining us today. Just a reminder, one of many I will give today. This is recorded. If we prefer you feel comfortable in your own space. So if you want to be on camera, please be on camera, join the conversation. You can also join the conversation off camera if you feel comfortable doing that, as long as you're a part of the conversation. So happy that you're here.
I may help you.
Yes. I'm trying to see if this is the right location for assistance.
Happy, I was about to say happy Wednesday. Happy Tuesday, everyone. So excited to see everyone coming into the space. We will get started in just a minute. Everyone ready? Wahida? Thumbs up? Oh.
Yes.
Look at that. I was about to cuss y'all. I was like, look at that beautiful MF right there. That must be my cue. So good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Just let there be wrapped in some goodness, whether it's sunny or rainy, no matter what the weather. Today is Tuesday everywhere, so happy to see all of you. Welcome to the Reunion Project's latest national virtual meeting. This is 3 hours where we'll have three separate or three different panel discussions about life beyond HIV and how we all have coped with it, what we're doing, what we're continuing doing to cope with it. My name is Larry Bryant. I am the Senior Program Manager with the Reunion Project. I am also a 39-year plus survivor of HIV. And in my long history, we used to always talk about the number of people we've lost to the epidemic, and to hold space for those people, for those individuals that we lose to the epidemic. And I want to include those, not just those who have passed, but those who have given their lives, taken their lives away from a one track to kind of an all hands on deck, to come to this space, to be a part of this movement, to help and support others, to heal others, to share with others. So I want to widen that umbrella to include us all in that protection. So again, I welcome you all here to be comfortable in your space. Again, if you feel comfortable having your camera on, turn it on. If not, that's fine too. But either way, say hi and where you're zooming from in the chat. Yeah, so again, this event will be recorded, so you know, and once this finishes, everyone who has recorded or registered for the webinar will receive a version of the image, I'm sorry, turn off my phone. Version of the video tomorrow. Closed captioning is available. You click on the bottom of your screen for those of you who have that capability. Feel free to use the chat. We will have a Q&A after each panel discussion, but feel free to use the chat to ask questions, give comments, give shout outs. You know, if you hear something one of the speakers says that really gets to you, you know, comment in the chat for that. Our panelists love to know that you're listening to them and that they are touching and connecting with their sharing. Feel free to ask questions as well during the webinar in chat, and we will collect those at the end of each section. All questions will be addressed during the last 15 minutes, and one of us will take notes of those questions throughout in the chat throughout the webinar. So feel free, we won't get lost. We hope it doesn't get lost in the chat. We will keep zooming, keep scanning for what we see. If you wish to remain anonymous, you can keep your video turned off and consider renaming yourself if possible, if that you think will be necessary to do. I am going to turn my phone on to vibrate so it doesn't ring throughout this. And also, please take a moment to fill out our evaluation that will be administered at the end of the webinar, and the link will be shared as well throughout. And it helps to know how we are doing, how our programs are connected with you as well. Next slide. So again, the Reunion Project was founded in 2015 by activists living with HIV. The Reunion Project, or TRP, is the National Alliance of Long-Term Survivors of HIV, collaborating with local and national HIV advocates, providers, and researchers. And together, we convene and connect both in-person events as well as the virtual ones you're here, you're joining us today on, through sharing our experiences of survival and loss while honoring our past. And of course, we want to develop successful strategies for living and supporting each other both today and into the future. So before we go any further, obviously we want to thank our funders, Gilead, Vive, and Broadway Cares, for their support. Without their support, we could not do this particular event. So we can thank them for their continued support and look forward to seeing their logos and the results of their support in future events put on by the Reunion Project. And first, I would like to, because we are the Reunion Project, and the has several committees, including the programs committee and the National Host Committee, who actually works very hard to put these webinars together. That it starts with developing the program, finding an idea for a topic, developing the program with that topic, and of course, helping to reach out to the speakers. And it's a collective effort, all led by our national chairperson, Janice Shirley, who Janice is an HIV and AIDS advocate. She has survived HIV for 18 years and has been in recovery for 21 years. Ooh. She serves on several committees, including the National HIV and Aging Advocate Network, or NAN. Janice is also an NMAC 50+ scholar. She is a certified peer support specialist. Her work in the community is obtaining transitional housing for people who are homeless and have substance disorders and mental health issues. Janice has a nonprofit called Hope in the End, where they can assist, where individuals can assist community members who are homeless and have substance disorders and mental health issues. Janice received the Harvard Stigma Award in 2022, and Janice is also a mother to 1 daughter and 3 adult granddaughters. Hello, Janice.
Hey, y'all, I want to welcome y'all. That's 3 adult daughters and 1 granddaughter. So, thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Larry. I appreciate it. I want to welcome everybody to our Looking Ahead with HIV. And I also want to welcome our committee to our national, wait a minute, y'all. I'm kind of thrown off for a minute. Got my papers wrong. To our national virtual reunion meeting. And this is our national host committee. We have Miss Portia, Mr. Derek, Miss Madeline, Miss Paris, Mr. Mark. We have Robin, AJ, Mr. Zeman, Miss Olga, and you have
Yes.
Nathan.
Yes,
So
she-
this is our national host committee.
Yeah, and if you're out there in
Yeah.
the virtual audience, please wave your hand or say something in the chat so we can give you some shine as well.
Yeah. Thank y'all. I also want to hold on y'all for a minute. I also want to thank the committee for allowing me to be the co-chair of this committee. I really appreciate being able to be involved with a whole lot of people from different areas, and I like how we came together to put this on. I also want to thank the Reunion Project, Ms. Wahida, Mr. Larry, and all of y'all for taking a chance, even on me being your co-chair. So right now, I'm going to introduce our theme, which is Looking Ahead with HIV, and I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Larry.
Thank you for that, Janice. So real quick, like I said, I just want to give a shout out to the chat. If you feel comfortable, put your name, where you're zooming from, just so we can get a representation of who's here with us in the space. I'm going backwards now. I see Robin. Thank you so much for the kind words, Robin. Wahida's there. Everyone say hi to Wahida. Hello, Kelvin from Tallahassee. Portia's here. Portia, Penny DeNoble. I need to stop doing that. Hello from Gardner, New York, Lillian. Yes, keep it coming, love it, love it. Miss Linda Scruggs, straight from District Heights, is blessing us with her presence. Thank you so much. So as we move forward, I want to acknowledge that a lot of the conversation that we're going to have for the next couple hours can be difficult. But it's a natural space that we inhabit, and we want to be able, as we do that, we want to be able to provide you with the supports necessary to keep everyone connected and keep everyone safe. Even in this virtual space, not that we can reach out and give each other hugs, like actual hugs, but we can do the virtual kind. And we also have Miss Jotina Buck, who is going to be stationed with us throughout the time, throughout the webinar, to provide respite space in a breakout room that will help us recenter ourselves if you need it. It's an optional space that will be available after every segment. Real quick, Jotina Buck goes by she, her pronouns, is a Black queer female licensed professional counselor, 200 hours registered yoga teacher, meditation and breathwork guide. She is the owner and founder, the first and only, let me repeat, the first and only Black queer female-owned integrative mental health practice in Central Houston. That right there deserves an applause. Root plus Yoke Wellness. Jotina has over 15 years of experience studying psychology and human behavior, and over the years, her soul's work has manifested in various forms. She's written personal development books, hosted empowerment gatherings, shared messages as a public speaker, served as an educator, school counselor, and mobilized on-ground support for marginalized communities in need both locally and abroad. Today, her soul's work is manifesting through listening and looking at what's here now to help heal as a mental health therapist and yoga guide. She is a wellness advocate with a commitment to closing the gaps of equity disparities in the BIPOC and LGBTQIA+ communities. Jotina loves supporting humans with better humaning. We all should strive to be better at humaning. She is a native Houstonian who loves her city. Jotina affirms that she is here to co-build a better, kinder, and more compassionate, human-centered world. Learn more about her practice and life's work at www.rootyokewellness.com. I will put that in the chat for everyone to be able to share as well. Again, Jotina Buck is a career Black, oh, no, that's good. So Jotina, are you there?
Oh, thank you so much, Larry, for that beautiful introduction. It's always a pleasure to hear back the work that you've done, in the world. And so I'm grateful. Thank you, Ahita, and the entire committee and team for inviting me back to the Reunion Project, as I shared with you all in 2022. And so it's beautiful to be back in this space as a space holder. And while all of those accolades that were read are beautiful, more than anything, I am here as a human with a heart to hold the hearts of the folks that are in this community today. I understand that these conversations, when we start to talk about age, death, dying, end of life, our ability to thrive and survive and live beyond diagnosis, and even be caregivers and supporters of our families and friends and community, that sometimes can cause us to feel triggered, right? Or at least cause our nervous systems to be rattled. And capitalism will tell us that we just have to plow through those emotions and feelings, ignore the nervous system, and continue forward. But what we know about embodied healing and intentional healing spaces is there's always a moment to pause. There's always a moment to ground yourself and take what you need. And so it's my sincere desire today, as we are moving forward through this very necessary conversation work here in this virtual setting, to provide that space for you to pause. So if in session or after session you feel yourself becoming dysregulated as a result of these conversations, and that happens, I invite you to join me in a safe space, a soft landing, to share some somatic tools, whether that's breath work and grounding, or even some mantras and centering thoughts and practices to support you with regulating your nervous system as you continue through in this conversation. Our space is optional, but it is available to you. I am committed to this community, and I'm committed to continuing to forge forward to serve our communities. And so it's my hope that if you have a need, I am here to support you in meeting that need throughout this entire session today. Thank you so much in advance for joining me in the space. And I look forward to leaning in and listening and learning as well throughout our time together today.
Thank you so much, Jotina. So now we will transition into a community self-care. It's a grounding exercise that's going to be led by Lapina Reed. Lapina Reed is a highly accomplished and recognized speaker, trainer, facilitator, and wellness coach. A member of the the Association of Nurses in AIDS Care, or ANAC, honorary member of the National Black Nurses Association, peer trainer with Bone Health and Osteoporosis Foundation, an advisory board member with several national organizations. Lapina's personal experience of 35 plus years with HIV has led her to advocate for the inclusion and continuum of care of women's rights and their access to quality health care. Maintaining a positive outlook on life has been a key to her longevity and aging well. Lapina, hey, Ms. Reed. You're on mute. You're on mute, Lapina.
Hello,
There you go.
and warm greetings for everyone, those that are on the West Coast where it's still early day, and others that are about in their midday of today. We have storms that are coming through. I live in the state of Florida, so we always welcome the water. We always welcome cleansing, and those high temperatures and humidity that we have been having. The rain really helps to refresh. So we are all connected. We're all connected through the source of life, and our one connection is our breath. And before I begin anything, I always, when I see people, I ask, is everybody breathing? So it nods a heads, I hope so. And I want to say we're all connected. So that's good that you're breathing. We're all connected through the breath. And if we're breathing, then joyfully, that means that we are alive. And the breath is what fills our planet and the air that we breathe. So I would like for you to get comfortable. We got a couple hours here. So if anyone wants to really kick those shoes off and get relaxed and comfortable, I say do so. So, and I want you to raise your hands. I'm wondering if I can see others in the group, or is it just on me, Larry? So,
There you go.
okay. So there we go. I got it now. So I can see everyone. Yes. I want you to take your hands. And with that, I want you, through the breath that is you, to just breathe into your hands. Just feeling that cool, refreshing part of you that is also part of our full, part of our universe, part of what sustains us. And just inhale and feel it. You know, each and every moment we probably don't recognize that we have this to sustain us. Play around, let it flow through your fingers. Inhale and breathe out, giving calm to your hands. So If you have taken those shoes off, that's great. Get relaxed and let the feet just feel like they're, sometimes I see some of our Janice has the water. Let your feet imagine that they're in some cool, refreshing water or just sitting on a cloud, Just let the feet, the toes, spread them out. Let them feel relaxed, wiggle them around. Let's give that same pleasure to our fingers right now. Let's let our fingers and our toes just dance as we continue to breathe that breath of life. Now, I want you to raise your arms at whatever level you can, low, medium, or high, stretching out, opening up our heart chakra, lifting the chin up, raising. Breathe in through our nose and out through our mouth, opening up our chest wide. We talked about a hug. I think this is about that moment that we give each and every one that's on the screen a hug, and we also give that hug to ourselves. Now lower those arms. Feel the breath as it moves through each and every layer and part of your body. Feel it as it goes from the top of your head, through your shoulders, down and through your stomach and out through your feet. Now I want you to take your hand and rest your hand on one side of your chin, either left or right, and just bend over and give a good, comfortable stretch to our neckline right in here. Continuing to breathe in and out and just stretch. And now as we come back to center, let's reverse and use our other hand and put it on our chin and just bend slightly over, getting a stretch. Breathing in and out, recognizing still the breath that is us. Come back to center. And now let your chin, as well as it can, to support you, rest on your chest and just hold down and breathe in and out as you naturally do every single day that you have been on this planet. Breathing in and out. Coming back to center, our forehead. Let's lift our head back. And when you lift back, I want you again to just breathe in and out. And now come to center. And we're going to raise our shoulders just a bit, bringing them up, breathing in through our nose and out through our mouth. One more time, raising the shoulders up, breathing in, and giving a strong as you release. So we're going to breathe in strong and let it out strong. There are times in our life when we just really need that breath to just go out, because life can sometimes take on a lot of levels, and we just take it in and we breathe it out, empty in our stomach to as much as we can. So roll those shoulders just 3 times back. 1, 2, and 3, and then go forward. 1, a little gentler now. 2, as we breathe, the oxygen and everything begins to just build in our whole systems in our bodies, and we feel refreshed. So I want you now to just sit straight with your feet planted in that water, on that cloud, comfortably sitting. And I want you to recognize and close your eyes and you see a bright light coming forward. Your eyes are closed, you see a bright light. The bright light could be bright, it could be colors of red or purple, yellow, green, blue, or orange. It could be different colors, different from colors from our chakra that you could possibly be seeing coming in your mind's eye. Take that color and move it to your heart. We're going to plant that into our heart. As it does, we want you to send that refreshing color and light to each and every participant, presenter, loved ones, and the universe, our planet at large. We want to send the light and love out into the world. Continue to breathe in and out. Now gently raising, begin to open your eyes. Feel your breath. Feel the breath of others. Lift those hands once again, like this. Taking your breath, I want you to give a breath out to everyone on this Zoom today. Receiving it, opening up our heart chakras, opening up this day. Remember, at any time you can breathe. It's what we are gifted to have in this journey called life. So I think that's a good refresher. Everyone feeling a little bit lighter, a little bit more alert. Thank you for those kisses. Thank you, Wanda. So remember the rhythm of your breath. Continue to breathe it in and out. I'll be back in a bit. And let's keep breathing.
Thank you, Lapina. Thank you so much. Yes, very important. Let's keep breathing. Even when you don't think you need it, just remind yourself of that breath.
Ashe.
Yes. All right, so we're going to move into our first panel. It's titled Addressing the Loss of Loved Ones. This panel will be led by Mark King and Dr. Jamal Haley, bios for both. Dr. Haley is a psychotherapist at the Good Practice, Good-Practice, LLC in Baltimore, Maryland, and the founder and CEO of the Practical Solutions in Psychological Services. They are a registered psychology associate. Dr. Haley graduated from Howard University, Howard, with a PhD in counseling psychology and a dual bachelor's degree in psychology and sociology from Townsend State. Townsend State doesn't get the same shout out. Their research examines Black masculinities and intimacy, as well as the historical impacts of social, structural, and institutional inequalities on health disparities impacting Black and LGBTQIA communities. Also joining Dr. Haley is Mark King, the co-moderator of this panel. Mark is a longtime friend of the Reunion Project and an activist, writer, and survivor of HIV for nearly 40 years. His book, My Fabulous Disease, Chronicles of a Gay Survivor, is a collection of essays over decades of writing about his experiences as an HIV-positive gay man recovering from addiction. And the panelists will include Kathy Elliott, who began her involvement in HIV and AIDS and the health justice issues after receiving her own HIV-positive diagnosis in 1995. Kathy has previously served as a member of the Adult AIDS Clinical Trials Group, the LA County Women's Task Force on HIV and AIDS, the AIDS Treatment Activist Coalition, or ATAC, of course, the Reunion Project, and a founding member of Positive Women's Network USA. Kathy has also served as a community liaison for Merck Pharmaceuticals from 2011 to 2021. Joining Kathy on the panel is Victor Reyes. Victor was born and raised in Harlem, New York City. Victor is not only a long-term survivor, Victor is a lifetime survivor. He and his wife moved to Washington, D.C., where he now lives and works as an after-school program director at an independent pre-K through 8th grade school in Capitol Hill. Victor's commitment to making a positive impact extends beyond his professional career. He has been a dedicated advocate for Harlem Hospital's Family Care Center, a specialized clinic for children and adolescents living with HIV since birth. He has the opportunity to speak at esteemed institutions such as Howard University Stigma Conference, International Conference on Stigma, Columbia Presbyterian Hospital, the University of Maryland, the School of Medicine at University of Maryland, NYU's Institute for Human Development and Social Change, and the 2024 CROI Conference. Victor's continued involvement in research as a research associate at Howard University, University's Department of Psychology's Global Community Health Lab is a testament to his dedication and community building and health. And finally, our third panelist is AJ Scruggs. He, him, king, is a trans masculine male and advocate living with HIV. AJ is an award-winning CEO and founder of Visible Truth 365. Some of AJ's current projects are Guys Like Us, the Visible Truth 365, Sex Worker Leadership Project, Black and Pink, Civic Engagement Fellow with the Take Resource Center in Pennsylvania, I believe. Decriminalized sex work with the Pennsylvania ACLU, and the Positively Trans Magazine Transgender Law Center. Welcome panelists, welcome Mark and Dr. Haley. Floor is yours.
All right, good afternoon. Can everyone hear me? Awesome, awesome. So Larry, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Again, my name is Dr. Jamal Haley. Please feel free to call me Jamal. Today we're going to be talking about the loss of loved ones and how it's something that we're still experiencing. When Mark and I first were having conversations, we were talking about how this can look different in a part of different communities. While not a person living with HIV, I'm someone who's been greatly affected by HIV. I lost a parent to HIV as a teenager. I had complications with HIV as a teenager, and have since then lost countless friends and have a number of family members living with HIV. As Mark and I were talking, Mark was mentioning how there was a point where we saw a drop off of people passing away due to HIV. And I was mentioning how that hasn't been my experience as a Black queer person in Baltimore, Maryland. How I have continued to lose both family and friends due to HIV. And that is kind of what I am bringing into this space. Mark?
Thank you very much, and it is a pleasure to serve on this committee, this panel with you, Dr. Haley. Although I'll try to call you Jamal. As you suggested, what occurred to me was, having lived with HIV for this long, for nearly 40 years, is yes, I did witness a lot of funerals, at a young age, and then they did fade away as the development of HIV medications in the mid-90s. And so what I'm seeing now as I start to attend funerals again, because for me there was this blank spot, or this respite from that kind of mortality, is a real confusion, kind of a PTSD of it reminds me of what I went through in my 20s and 30s. And although I have practical skills, I know my way around a hospital, or when to call hospice care or what have you, kind of the emotional, spiritual big questions, I'm no better equipped to answer now than I was the first time around. So it's just led to a lot of kind of interesting kind of confusion and a weird sense of, I thought I had escaped something. that has come around again. But I really hear your perspective about the fact that depending on who you are, where you're in your life experience, you may not have that feeling at all. You may not, and this may be a constant drumbeat, I guess, of mortality. Could I get you to tell us just a little bit more about that, Jamal?
Sure. So, um, for me, like I think when I think about my time in HIV work, one of the things that originally pulled me away from direct services was the fact that in I want to say about 12 months, I lost 13 friends, and all due to HIV, complications due to HIV, and no one had actually shared they were living with HIV. Stigma was still something. This was kind of 2006, 2007. No one had shared they were living with HIV, and so it was us cleaning out their apartments, us cleaning out their medicine cabinets, us cleaning out their finding their secret stashes of medication in their rooms that really um, drove home the point that HIV for us is not, for at least for my experience, wasn't something that we can kind of just, kick our feet up and say we have medication, everyone's fine. Along with HIV, right? If you live in a city like Baltimore, having HIV treatment doesn't erase the other factors that really do shorten the life expectancy for Black folks in the city. Violence is something we still have to worry about. Um, Drug use is something we still have to worry about. Someone may not die, let's say, due to um, any complications of the HIV, but they may also die from an overdose. While we might not think about it as HIV related, they started using when they found their diagnosis, right? So it's all related, and it's impossible to tease apart for me.
Thank you for that. It's worth pointing out that every year in the United States, over 6,000 people still die of HIV-related complications. And as you rightly point out, this is not necessarily about whether or not the medications exist. It's about a lot of isms that affect our society and our healthcare system. And there's so much to unpack there, and I could keep going, but I want to pull in our panel. Kathy, you had mentioned to me when we talked earlier about the fact that you are experiencing some loss too. I don't know if this is new for you in your stage of life, if it recalls something from earlier, but you have had the loss of HIV peers, your parents, things like that. How has that been for you?
Sure. Well, I'll just kind of start back. So, being diagnosed in March of 1995, I was on the cusp of, right, all the advances in treatment. So I didn't experience as much loss, and I also began sort of working in HIV shortly after that as like a peer advocate. And I remember, back then there was a lot of hope, right? There's these new medications and everybody's, gonna live. But still, periodically we would lose someone within the women's support network in Los Angeles. But in general, like just the outlook in terms of living with HIV just kept getting better and better every year. And it wasn't until sort of later in my adulthood. My mom died in early 2002, and then I lost my brother, my only brother, to an overdose in 2011. And then I didn't have much death until my father passed in 2017. So that left me without parents. I don't have a large family, and I really wish I did. I wish I had siblings and things to rely on. My ex-husband died last July, and he was someone who I met at an HIV support group that I was facilitating way back when. We were great together until we weren't. But it was, he died from cancer, right? Just last year. And then, sadly, a friend of mine who was not part of the HIV community, but was very supportive of me, decided to commit suicide in my garage this past November. So it's been sort of a series of just sudden losses. And I remember in the early days of living with HIV, like, I would lose people, but I wasn't necessarily very close to them. But I heard kind of all the horror stories of people that lost their entire social network. I sort of lost my social network when I relocated from Los Angeles to Las Vegas. It's a much smaller and more transient community here. So I have a few friends I can count on one hand from the pause community here. But I left hundreds of friends in Los Angeles. And so it kind of feels like I'm on an island. And I've also just, been dealing with a lot of things that many of us are, depression and late onset alcoholism, which I'm in recovery from right now. But you know, that really took me to a dark space too. And it was like, okay, well, wow, things are good. The HIV is like the least of my concerns. It's manageable, but it's like it's life and getting older. And I mourn the loss of my looks. I mourn the loss of I'm alone, right? I don't have a relationship. And all of those things that I think a lot of people with and without HIV kind of worry about as we age. Being alone was not something that I planned, because I remember it's just the evolution of when I first found out, oh my God, I'm going to die within 5 years. And then boom, all of a sudden I wasn't going to die. And then I better get my life together. And I did. But now I'm kind of back to just a space of, like I have everything that I, really need, not necessarily everything I want, but I am alone. And it's strange to be at this, I just turned 60, right? And technically I've kind of been living with HIV equal to the amount of time I haven't been living with HIV. And it's just a strange juxtaposition at this phase of my life.
Wow, that is a lot of you're throwing down a lot of honest shit that I relate to so much. And things that might seem surface but matter or have mattered to me. My loss of feeling vital, my loss of my looks or what they once were, all of that stuff. Not to mention, I always say tragedy is not a contest. Those of us who might throw out how many friends we've lost, and of course that's legit, and you want to remember them all. Um, two friends that were close to you that were meaningful is enough. It's enough to grieve, it's enough to remember, it's enough to be traumatized from. AJ, I'm curious as to what your experience has been like, and from the community from which you hail, as well as just your personal experience, what might you have to add to that?
So loss for me looks a little different when you have to be the educator in your community. As a trans man, I have access to a very unique community that is very silent, often forgotten about, not even given the space. Um, even if we look at HIV surveillance information, like it's not there. We're not there. Um, so to kind of find out that trans men have been neglecting care once they get their diagnosis and how far into isolation that goes. We are losing guys to by isolation suicide as a trigger warning. And it's a lot more common amongst trans men. We see that there are numbers to support that once we get our diagnosis, that we are also in care, but that's for those that actually go back and remain in care and they're constantly in that continuum of care. But if you're also a trans man living in the South where any kind of sexual activity that is not heterosexual is demonized, you are also dealing with that. Then you have to deal with external transphobia. Transphobia when you go get care and accessing any kind of care at all. So that kind of puts you in this place like, well, people don't want me here. So I saw isolation suicide is basically to the point where you isolate till you don't take your medication, and you also isolate to the point of you either take your own life or you don't take care of yourself to where your life is basically wasting away. Um, and I'm seeing that on the I'm seeing that on the rise amongst guys. And it wasn't until I was able to be very open and vocal about me living with HIV, that I noticed that there were so many guys that needed to kind of like save themselves from going down that rabbit hole, because I've had at least 10 guys in the last 2 years tell me that I've saved their life. And that's kind of heavy. Because on the opposite end of that is, how am I going to carry all of that and not even deal with my own? Because then I now have to carry the stories of, I can't go to this treatment center because they don't know that I'm a trans man, and that then leads to mistreatment and care. So it's a multi path way to a very unfortunate ending. And I speak for my brothers that don't have a voice right now. It gets tough because I even have my own little isolation moments where it can get real bad if I didn't have that support, and that network of support.
Thank you, AJ. You know, it doesn't just sound like a multitude of issues, it sounds like an avalanche for you in terms of those, all of that. I'm very moved by that. And I want to ask you, you started by saying it's hard to do this when you're an educator, when you're a leader within your community. We have seen a lot of our leaders, we've seen a lot of our own folks within the HIV arena um, um, take their lives or mistreatment for a multitude of reasons and be gone. I mean, we've seen it not just amongst the rank and file, but amongst people who we held up and who bore responsibility like you do. And you've kind of alluded to that, the fact that that's kind of an extra burden. How do you self-care? How do you take on the people you're serving as well as your own stuff and take care of yourself? Are you doing it? Do you feel like you're doing it enough?
I could be doing better at it. Trying to mandate it for myself. Also, I have a great network of folks that, AJ, go take care of yourself. And will give me a good old fashioned slap on the back of the neck and head and be like, go ahead, handle your business and take care of yourself because we need you around here. Your community needs you.
Thanks. You know, Victor, you are a lifetime survivor. I actually love that phrase, lifetime survivor. I know we've used kind of different, tried out different, you know, names for people who were born or had became HIV positive very soon after birth. I know that y'all have had a lot of loss within the lifetime survivor community. Is that due to the kinds of issues we've been talking about? Are there issues specific to lifetime survivors that has led to recent mortality? Tell us about that.
First of all, hi everyone, how you doing? I just heard so many amazing points. I think there's just a multitude of connecting dots here, touching on Kathy's kind of trauma that comes with having it, and then being told that you're going from from a terminal illness to a chronic illness, and seeing funding getting taken away from hospitals, where then you lose a lot of, let's say, DOT programs that were, drop-in programs where you're able to meet your peers to take medication for just, general support and just kind of a time to take your mind off of things. And you go from all the robust funding and availability of programs in the early 90s to a situation where all of that gets taken away. You're in adult clinics where they're not as funded in that respect. And you really have then what AJ calls, the silent suicide or isolation suicide, because then who are people running to? In my clinic in New York at Harlem Hospital, we were so lucky to have so many available resources in our little clinic. We were 150 something plus, let's say, participants in that clinic. And year after year, you see people dying when services got taken away, and you see people kind of move and not have access to peers, to people that they can kind of lean on. And I was lucky enough to work with Dr. Kang at Howard University, and we followed 20 to 25 different people who were born or have had HIV for a long stretch of their lives, and so many of the stories were so similar. They were so excited to not only have a peer, people that can understand their experience, but they can finally, some of them spoke about it openly for the first time since, let's say, leaving New York or maybe ever, about their status. So to hold something like that in, let's say, for 10, 15, 20 years and never mutter the words HIV out loud, you are destroying yourself internally. And to not be able to talk to people openly, I think that, as AJ, touched on, is just such a huge factor. Which is why I know mental health is the biggest topic right now that we're all talking about in terms of medication support, but mental health goes hand in hand, because if you just, there's no way to get around the reality that so many of us that were our lifetime survivors were told from a young age and saw our young friends die, over time, and we were told that's probably going to be us as we're getting Make-A-Wish gifts from people, and we're seeing the reality, and we're seeing our parents die from what they just told us we also have, that they have. And so you're going through all this trauma, and then at a point in late 90s, early 2000s, you're told you're okay, actually, guys. You can get on with your lives now. You can go. And so I think that there's that bridge that we have to get through together. How do we communicate that to the medical professionals, that they look at it as we were spoiled when we were children, we had all this good care, but now as adults, it's sometimes not taken as serious, the mental health component. So so many of that rings true to me, and that's just kind of my take on some of that.
Thank you, Victor. We've heard from everybody, and now I'm going to just let you all of us kind of have a conversation about what we just talked about. Jamal, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I really just wanted to thank Victor for bringing the topic of lifetime survivors into the conversation, because I don't do this work anymore. It's been about 4 years since I stepped away from it. But the number of young people that we had who were born with HIV and who we lost transitioning to adult care doesn't get talked about enough. Adult providers do take that attitude that, oh, you're spoiled and now you're going to have to be an adult and take care of yourself. These are folks who are like 21, 22, 24 years old. Most providers weren't taking care of themselves in that way, but they expect other young people with additional needs to be able to do that. It's unfair. We do continue to lose services, and we kind of forget about this group of people, and we don't have enough conversations about the way that we as HIV service providers actually fail young people. And it's just not captured enough.
And if I can touch on what Jamal was also saying, thank you. When we look at other people with different conditions, maybe being born diabetic, maybe heart conditions, those people from children, from really young up into adulthood, they have their own medical team. And if they're transitioning into a different medical team as an adult, their pediatric care is almost seamless. And all that information is being transferred over because they understand the importance and severity of it. And I think that there's not enough kind of understanding, for better lack of word, on how important it is for people that have had it for such an extended amount of time, who have lived through the moments where you were unsure how long you were actually going to live, regardless of how much you were taking your medication, because everyone's path is so different. My brother and I were born positive. My brother died 6 years ago. He's my youngest brother. And we were up and down together. We had clinic together, and our journeys couldn't have been any more different. He was always in the hospital or just kind of resisted medication. As for myself was completely different. but our care was the same. And that doesn't make sense because we obviously needed different things, and that goes for just about anyone that has it. Your care is just looks very different compared to someone else.
This is Kathy. I kind of want to just pick up on that. Thank you, Victor, because you just like really set the tone for this discussion about inclusion, right? And I really have to commend the Reunion Project at the very first sort of founding forum in Palm Springs. You know, everyone involved made it a point to include long-term survivors, you know, born with HIV or acquired during childhood. It is a different experience, but I think it's really rich that we can all learn from each other. Again, my experience versus Jamal's versus Mark's, there's some similarities, but there are some major differences, you know, AJ as well. And I love that we have this forum to come together. Obviously, we don't have all the answers yet. I think I have found in my own experience, just even advocating for my own healthcare at this age, like for so long, you know, my doctor was just focused on managing the virus, right? Let's get the virus. Sometimes I have to remind my doctor, hey, am I due for you know, another anoscopy or a colonoscopy, you know, just because of my age. And it's, you know, sadly, even at this stage, we still have to like make sure that we're deeply involved in our own healthcare so that we get our needs met. And there's still a lot of unknowns, I think, out there when it comes to HIV and aging, right? And you know, one thing I didn't touch on is I have a very close friend who's from the HIV community. And, you know, I've kind of spoke about, you know, dealing with my own demons. You know, I'm very concerned about my friend because I kind of have ancillary knowledge that this individual is actively abusing substances. And like, what do we do? How do we help and support each other? You know, whether it's substances or someone's dealing with depression, you know, being able to, not every community has, you know, an organization that has like a special group for people that are long-term survivors. And I just really think that the more that we can all reach out to our peers out there, the more open we are about our own status, you know, being able to bring other people in is important.
Thank you, Kathy. You know, I tend to sometimes rewrite my own narrative in real time, and I fudge it to get the response I'm looking for, or to tell the story that I think is the happier one. And something I'm realizing in this conversation is I say, oh, I had this long period where no death and dying, everything was great once, you know, people got the meds in the late 90s. And that's not true. I'm in recovery. I have lost many friends to overdose during this time, and yet I want to compartmentalize HIV and say, oh yeah, but the HIV is fine, nobody's dying of that. You know, it makes me realize that I am very much, I very much relate to all of the other kind of social ills and challenges that all of you are referring to in your own way, aside from HIV, but very much parallel to it. And I'm part of that. I tried to kill myself for a long time, just slowly, by injecting drugs. So I have to rewrite my narrative a little bit on that score. Does anybody have, before we move on to the Q&A, does anybody have any tips on how it is you deal with multiple loss, or you know, the kinds of things that we've been talking about? Does anybody have anything that's might be helpful to those watching in terms of dealing with these issues?
My name is Wanda Commander, and I'm in Baltimore. I recently joined a grief counseling group sponsored at the church that I was attending, and it has been very instrumental in helping me to overcome those hurdles from the hurt that's been layered through the years from the loss of so many individuals, and not just people who were using HIV, which really touched my heart because many of them were my friends, some were family members, but other people who I had lost too from my family. So I let all this build up inside of me, and it caused me to react when I was around people, and it came out in my behavior. So now that I've started grief counseling, I can see a change because I'm working through the things. I'm expressing the hurt, the pain that I felt from those losses. And I believe, if anything, that would be most instrumental in helping anyone who has lost multiple losses.
Thank you. Thank you
You're
for that.
welcome.
Anything from our
Hi.
panelists about on
Hi,
that?
this is
Oh,
hey,
go
this
ahead.
is
Go ahead.
Wahida. I just want to just jump in and let folks remind folks that we have a quieter space, a respite space with Jotina Buck. If someone needs to go be moved into that room, if you let us know, we'll move you into that room right about now as while folks are doing the Q&A. But this is a time for those who need some extra time and space to reset their nerves or calm their nerves. They can move into that space. That space is available right now. So just kind of let us know and we will open that room and start moving folks over. Thank you for that.
Thank you for that, Wahida. And before you continue, Mark, I just want to also add that if you don't feel comfortable going into the room, or maybe later after this call, you want to contact someone, I put in the chat also NAMI free resources if you want to reach out to find local support wherever you are. There's tons of support groups out there that NAMI provides, and so if you need the immediate help, yes, Jotina is here in the breakout room, but also feel free to connect to one of the resources in the chat as well. Sorry about that, Mark, go ahead.
No, I appreciate that, Larry, very much. You know, it is, it's a tough issue, and maybe we're all a little jaded having dealt with HIV for so many years, but talking about multiple loss and death and dying is tough stuff, you know, but important. I've been thinking, you know, we always said silence equals death, and we're being silent about death a lot of times, and we're not kind of confronting the fact that we're not always survivors, and that we have losses among us, and can we deal with that in a healthy way? Larry, I don't know how we do Q&A here. Do we? Because I admittedly have not been looking at the chat box, so I don't know what people might be asking.
Well, I have been looking at the chat box, Mark, yes. And so far there have been no actual questions. Well, Jeff Berry just put a question in the chat. How do you join the breakout group? So Wahida or Heather, can you give us a quick?
Absolutely. So I'm currently working on setting up the breakout room. You should get a notification that pops up on your screen that allows you to join if you'd like to. You can choose to leave the room at any time and join the general Q&A if you'd like to. It's going to be open for 20 minutes and you'll get a notification when your time is almost up in the breakout room. So hold on for just a few seconds and you will get that notification.
And if for whatever reason you do not see or get that notification, direct message Heather and she will just transition you into the breakout group. So yeah, Mark, I didn't see any questions, so feel free if anyone is out there has questions for Mark, for Dr.
There's one.
Haley.
Miss Linda put one in the chat. It says, how do we help others manage some feelings in isolation when peers aren't available?
There you go.
And
Thank you.
Portia, I see your hand.
For me, one of the ways that I've been able to kind of like supplement like having support space in person is creating virtual communities. Utilizing things like Discord or even Facebook, where folks can find the space. I actually got the idea at the beginning of COVID. I put all of my friends into a Facebook group and we video chatted every day. And we kept each other sane that first year and a half in quarantine. So I saw that idea worked. So I have been holding space for trans masculine folks nationwide for some time. And even if it just starts out as a text group to say, hey, you know, I'm checking in. I need to see everybody's react to this comment. And if somebody's missing, If I don't see you reacting, I'm calling your phone. If you don't pick up the phone, then I'm sending somebody to your house. Have a have a set of steps to like make sure we gonna agitate this and we gonna knock on your door eventually, and probably bring you some of your favorite juice and candy because at that point there's something that you need to be cheered up for.
Thank you, AJ. Portia, you had your hand up? You need.
Yes, I didn't want to interrupt. I didn't know if anybody else wanted to add to that question, Miss Linda.
Just to add to that question that Linda asked, I would say, we sometimes forget about it, but the power of journaling is so important. And so if you can't connect with someone, spending time journaling can be a really good way to kind of get your feelings out, to reflect on what your emotions are, and also depending on how you practice, some people can really find that finding ways to honor their loved ones can really be cathartic, whether it's through something physical like having a shrine, or whether it's through particular types of things that you used to do together and doing those things. But finding ways to honor your loved ones, and then also really leaning into the power of journaling.
Thank you.
This is Kathy. Can I put a plug in for something? So, because Mark originally asked kind of, what kind of coping skills are we using? Obviously, creating a family. And I meant to say that when I first looked at all the attendees, I see so many people that I've just known for decades, and it's just great to see everyone's faces. Something that I have been involved with since the 90s, it started, I think, in the mid to late 90s, is the annual Pause Cruise. And I will just put the website in the chat. The vast majority of people, there's usually around 100, 125 every year. We go different places, and it's for people living with HIV and their friends and family and allies. And through that, I haven't been on every single cruise over the years, but I've been on quite a few. And I know because there are other people on the call today that are a part of the network or have been on the cruise. And I just want to say it's not for everyone. Obviously, there's a financial commitment. But for me, not having a really strong, social network here, I really look forward to it every year. I've gotten to know some people, and we've been losing. We lost the founder of the cruise a few years ago, and we've lost several of our longtime cruisers from age-related thing, a heart attack or something like that. But we always take time to remember them on the cruise, and it's just a great way, particularly for people who don't live in a big city and don't have a strong HIV social network in their own area. You make some really great lifelong friends on that. So I just wanted to put that in there. If you have any questions about it, feel free to reach out to me, but I'll put the website in, and you can please share it with people that might benefit.
Thanks, Kathy.
So we have Melanie. Portia's hand is still up. I'm not sure she's asked her question yet. So Melanie, Portia, Melanie, and then I have one for you in the chat. It's in a minute, Mark.
Okay, great. Portia, go ahead.
And it was not necessarily a question. I just wanted to just be intentional about kind of just lifting up some of the names of the folks that we've lost within our community. Like Mr. Jamal said, honoring the folks we lost. So Kalea Smith, I know Curtis is on right now, so rest in peace to Kalea. She was a part of our Lifetime Survivors group. And then of course Hydea, who we just lost recently. And Tiffany and Mary, they're a little bit older, but I just wanted to lift their names up in this space. And great job, guys. This was a really good panel. That isolation suicide, AJ, I'm gonna take that back. That's what it is. That's what is going on. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm also seeing flashing by in the chat some really nice tips that people themselves have used toward this, and I've seen gardening more than once. And I got to tell you, I was never a gardener, and my husband's making me do it. And there is something so, I don't know what, about planting something, a bulb that doesn't come up for 9 months. I don't know what I'm saying. It's helped with feelings of mortality. I don't know how, but seeing it in the spring and the winter and the spring is teaching me something that is very comforting. Melanie.
Yes, I wanted to comment on what was going on in the chat, gardening, um, writing, the John G. Bartlett Specialty Practice in Baltimore, Maryland, 4 years ago started a grief support group, and we write and do poetry, and during the sessions we speak it out loud, spoken word performance or sing, and that has been a help for those who don't want to be in therapy but get therapeutic. um uh it's a Our group therapeutically supports one another. And I encourage them to get um, be in therapy, and that there's nothing wrong with being in therapy. And death and losing isn't not just somebody dying. Now, when my mobility is less now, so the more things I cannot do, I grieve that for a period of time, and then I work with my therapist and my poetry group. So it can be that death and dying and losing something does not necessarily mean somebody in the flesh.
Thank you. I feel as if we need to wrap this up. Larry, are we about out of time here? Shall
We
we?
are. I gave you the last question in the chat. I don't know if you saw that.
I'm sorry, I didn't. I don't have my chat open.
I can ask it for you. So from Jonathan, should a person be admitted to a hospital bed via the ER? Those with durable power of attorney for healthcare need to resend to the unit clerk that info as the ER medical record gets closed out.
Oh, goodness. I don't know if one of our panelists could answer that. That is a clinical question that I'm not, certainly not. However, can't recommend enough the Philadelphia AIDS Legal Project, which has a host of documents online that can answer just about any hospital care, end of life, power of attorney type question. Philadelphia AIDS Legal Project.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Mark. I'm
And
sorry,
before-
Dr. Haley. Yeah.
Oh, but we have an attorney later on today. So, Dr. Haley, Jamal, would you like to say any closing remarks?
So just, well, one, thank all the panelists. I thank you all for participating in this panel. And I think we all got a lot of good information, and definitely thanks for all the resource share in the chat. Please continue to do that. And in closing, in terms of honoring folks that we lost, I would like to just bring into the room Carlton Smith. He passed away 2 weeks ago, and he was one of Baltimore's strongest advocates, one of my personal mentors, and I would not be here if it was not for his amazing work. So just wanted to bring his name into the space.
Thank you.
You know, it's such a popular and an important thing that we always celebrate living with HIV and all of the power and resilience that we have. It's also important that we talk about issues of death and dying, as we've done today. And I really appreciate the Reunion Project for having the guts to have this topic, have this conversation head on, and talk about issues associated with loss. So thank you very much. Thank you so much, Kathy, Victor, AJ, for your input, my co-moderator, Jamal, and we'll move on to the next segment of our town hall.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you,
Thanks,
Dr.
everyone.
Haley. Thank you to the panelists. Oh,
Thank you.
such a great conversation. And please, if I welcome the panelists as well as Dr. Haley and Mark to put your contact info in the chat in case any of our participants want to just reach out to you directly or follow, see what y'all doing, or maybe get an autographed copy from you, Mark, of your book. So thank you so much for that. And now, before we go to our next panel, we're going to have a couple of minutes of just a breathing reset that Lapina is going to walk us through just to kind of keep us centered as we engage in these heavy and sometimes challenging conversations of some very tough life situations and trauma. Go ahead, Lapina.
as we continue to breathe the breath of life. So I know that I shared with you, if your shoes are still off and you're feeling comfortable, because these conversations really bring on for us the comfort and the feeling of relief that we need. So if the toes and fingers are still feeling comfortable, once again, I want you to just stretch those arms out. Lift your feet up just ever lightly from the floor and just bounce. Just bounce with your feet and your hands, doing some circles, opening it up, breathing in and out, stomping and shaking with your hands. And a deep breath. Ah, let our voices sing. Ah, ah. That is our breath of life. So take those fingers, wiggle them a bit. Let's go up to our temple right here. Up to our temple, and let's tap. Just tap across your forehead, rubbing your temple and tapping. Tap down your earlobes. Come on, I want to see those fingers moving our bodies. This is what our body loves, to be comforted and touched, and the breath of life can just move through us. Just bend your neck down and just rub the back of your neck right here, squeezing, giving ever so many little rubs. Go on to your shoulders and just lift right in here, roll over. Breathing out. Roy, I really, really appreciate, I really appreciate your involvement in everyone. So just continue to do that. Tap one more time. I want you to take your fingers. We do so much with our hands, so very much. Take each and every finger singularly and just stretch them out, each joint on the fingers. Go into the inside of our finger in our hands and just give a rub. Whatever, these points on our body are always holding tension to so many things throughout the day. Breathing in and out with your eyes closed or with your eyes open. I want you once again to just bring those colors that I mentioned earlier: red, yellow, blue, green. These are the flowers, Mark, that I am growing right from the top of my head right now. Roll the shoulders back, breathing in through the nostrils, let it out with an ah. As your hands are rested on your thighs there, just go down to your knees if you can. Just give a rub right to your knee center, up through your thighs, and bring it up into your arms. These are tapping efforts which just really help to settle and calm us. Once more. And if you're on mute, just a big one. I'm not. Those are the many things that I do it every day. I have to release. And through these breath exercises, they really, really help to relieve my tension. So I hope that they have helped you. Take those arms once again. We can't give ourselves and those out there hug, hug, hug. Take that breath. Let's blow it again to each other for our next conversations. Wiggle those toes and
Thank you,
thank you.
Lapina. Thank you so much. I needed that. All right, so our next panel is going to talk to us about the Last Gift Cure Research Study. If you're not familiar, UC San Diego's Last Gift is a research study committed to understanding the behavior of HIV in the human body. And to give us more details on what that does and how it helped us, we have a panelist, list of panelists. Andy Cates first. Andy has been involved with HIV treatment and research advocacy since the mid-1990s, not the 1900s, 1990s. He co-chairs the UCSD Antiviral Research Center CAB and actively serves on numerous advisory boards and is a member of the Community Scientific Subcommittee of the AIDS Clinical Trials Group. Joining Andy is Dr. Karine Dubé, if I pronounce your name correctly. Karine is an associate professor at the UCSD School of Medicine, Division of Infectious Diseases and Global Health. She has worked with the UCSD Last Gift program since the beginning in 2017, and her work bridges biomedical research, social behavioral sciences, empirical ethics, and patient community stakeholder engagement in HIV cure-related research in the United States and South Africa. Joining also the panel is Patricia, or Katie Riggs. Katie is an infectious disease physician and researcher at the University of California, San Diego. Her primary research focuses on how inflammation due to HIV and other viral infections affects brain health, mood, and cognition primarily. Joining the panel as well is Melanie Reese, currently 72 years of age, is a long-term survivor of 25 years. She uses the pronouns she, they, and them. But Melanie is the executive director of the Older Women Embracing Life, or OL, and also is a member of the ICW North America as a board secretary. She is an author, a speaker, a moderator, a panelist, an advocate, activist, community organizer, and just an overall Wonder Woman, Melanie Reese. Finally, for the panel is Jeff Berry. You all know Jeff. He's the co-founder of this here thing we call the Reunion Project, the National Alliance of Long-Term Survivors of HIV, and also serves as the chair of the Reunion Project Steering Committee. He's the inaugural chair of the CRISPR for Cure CAB of the Martin Delaney Cure Collaboratories. He was also honored as one of the 2015 PAUSE 100 long-term survivors. Barry, a former club DJ, was awarded Gay Chicago's DJ of the Year in 1990, and he also resides and survives in Chicago, Illinois, with his husband, Stephen, and their 2 furry kids. The panel is yours. Welcome, Andy, Karine, Patricia, Melanie, and Jeff.
Thank you so much, Larry, and we would like to thank the Reunion Project and WAIDA for inviting us to discuss the UCSD Last Gift program. Katie will project our slides. Yes, Wahida?
That was my mistake. I was trying to say hi.
Oh, thank you. Hello.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Thank you, Katie. So the UCSD Last Gift program is a program that enrolls people with HIV who are towards the end of life in research towards an HIV cure. So we'll talk a little bit about how we got there, and then we'll talk about the last gift. And the name Last Gift was actually selected by the UCSD Antiviral Research Center Community Advisory Board after extensive community engagement. Next slide. And the logo that you see was actually designed by Andy Cates. So Andy designed the piece of the puzzle. And so there's been a lot of social behavioral research that was conducted by Jeff Taylor and Brendan Brown on community-driven health priorities for healthy aging with HIV. This was done as part of a PCORI, Patient-Centered Outcome Research Institute program. And what we found, as we discussed earlier, was around the need to address complex psychosocial issues, the need to promote resiliency and social support, and also there were gaps in provision of end-of-life services. So this has always kind of been the background on which the Last Gift was built on. Next slide. And there's also been a lot of community advocacy on changing the way we age with HIV. I think some of the pioneers are on the slide. So Jeff Taylor, Wahida, Jules Levin have really called for action around more funding and really making aging with HIV a priority for funders. So that advocacy continues and needs to continue. Next slide. And with the last gift, we recognized that end-of-life issues for people living with HIV really occur along a spectrum. So attention should be given to all the different stages of aging and the end of life. And so we recognize this is a transition process. So transition from primary medical care into palliative care, and then hospice care into the dying process, and then the impact of death on loved ones, next of kin, partners, and friends. So it's really a transition. And the last gift does not offer palliative care. It is research, but it is conducted in the context of people with HIV at the end of life. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that entails. But first, next slide. ND will talk to us about the early days of the last gift and how we got there.
Thank you for having me, everyone. I was listening to the last session, and I'm going to go off book real quick, take it for what it is, but it was so emotional to hear everything. And I'm sitting in my hotel room at a conference right now, and the light was on above me. And that's what I saw. And it reminded me of all the angels that we've lost. So anyway, as far as the last gift goes, it really was a very unusual idea that was presented to the UCSD CAB, Community Advisory Board, which I chaired, and it was really outlandish to think that someone would maybe take advantage of someone in their last moments. And then we thought about it as a community, and we thought, wow, this is amazing. So we knew that the scientists needed fresh tissues from the body. It's all about tissue. We know this as far as the HIV reservoir is concerned. So you can't get that effectively from people in their blood, and not everybody is willing to give tissue samples, and it's not possible to get all of the tissues. So we worked with Corrine and the doctors that are chairing the study, Davey Smith and Sarah Gianella. And I guess to back up, the UCSD CAB has had a real trusting relationship with the investigators and the doctors at UCSD. That's something that they built for us. And so we do trust them. That really opened the door for us. And then the foundation was laid by Corrine, who Jeff and I had worked with for a number of years in the Martin Delaney Collaboratories. And we thought, my gosh, this woman is so special when she is involved in a study that is all about people. And it's not all about biology and sampling and everything. So she spoke our language. And so she built this foundation that we worked, I guess, our magic on, because that's really the only way to describe this. I've never seen a clinical trial that is as reverent, as respectful, and treats the participants with such dignity as the Last Gift team. We have some amazingly special people. The early days was kind of a combination of the community riffing with the investigators. And we just started getting these amazing ideas, and it all revolved around people, well, like us, who've been around with HIV for a long time. We remember the days before there was effective treatment, when clinical trials were treatment. and we were banging down the doors to get into them. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Those of us that went through that, we got very familiar with clinical trials and research, so we participated. That's not something that happens today to the degree that we knew. And what I can say is that when you get a diagnosis of a terminal illness, you don't qualify for any studies. And your life it's got a timestamp on it, and it can be very daunting. So the last gift was created as a true last gift. It is for the participants a lasting legacy that they can leave. And what Karine was just talking about with the piece of the puzzle, that is something that I designed because it's a piece of the puzzle that is revolving around HIV cure. So hopefully the entire puzzle will be put together someday, sooner than later. But that's where we started. One of the special things that really happened that formed and shaped the questionnaires and informed consent that Karine developed is that the community, as well as a very special man who lost his husband, who was a participant in the last gift, after he lost his husband and the man completed the study, I'm not going to mention names, but he came and he sat in our cab for a couple of sessions and sat right next to me, tearful, cheerful, and hopeful because of what his husband had done and left for the world. So some of the people that were in our community advisory board at that time are also study participants at this point, and they were facing a terminal illness themselves, but they didn't have they had more than 6 months. They had several years, maybe. They weren't imminently ready to, go into hospice. So from day one, this has really been a community and participant driven study. We don't do all the biological stuff and all the medical stuff, but last gift participants are able to do whatever they want to do as far as blood draws, sampling. They can say, hey, I just don't feel like it today. The team goes to them, to their homes, or in hospice or wherever they may be, and they become part of our family. I've never seen anything like this where clinical trials that run so efficiently yet maybe not very warm, they're kind of clinically cold, and there's a separation between investigators and participants. That doesn't exist with the last gift. Every single participant has become one of our family. And speaking of family, I should have disclosed early on that I am actually life partners with Dr. Riggs. And that didn't happen because of last gift, but it just was coincidental. So when I speak about last gift, and I could go on forever, and I know I've already gone on longer than I intended, I'm speaking from two perspectives. I hear the clinical side of it, I hear the pathology side of it, and I see the person that comes and goes when it's required to participate in an autopsy. And I can tell you that it is really, really heartening to see how well people are treated. And I think I'll kind of leave it there. But it's something that we're all very proud of as a community. It is so close to our hearts. It feels like we all have ownership of this study, and it gives the opportunity to those of us that have already given so much and want to continue giving, to give a lasting legacy that is hopefully going to lead to an HIV cure. But it's been amazing about understanding the reservoirs that Dr. Riggs will get into here in just a moment.
Thank you so much, Andy. That was beautiful. So the community really advocated for the last gift. When the funders were saying, no, people can't do this, the community said, no, we're ready. This is what we want. This is our study.
That's the way. You don't want to mess with the community when it comes to things like this. Listen to us.
Thank you. Katie, would you like to do this slide?
Yeah, so absolutely. So kind of everything that Andy said, and this is kind of laying out that, the community was involved from the very beginning, and it really was, something I've never seen. And I know that most people involved in the study also haven't seen such a partnership from the beginning with the basic scientists, community, social behavioral scientists, all working together to make sure that it isn't just the scientists saying, we need to ask this of the community, but what can we all do to make a really meaningful study that, targets everybody's needs as best as possible. And so I think I'm really honored to be able to work with the study team because of that, because it is such a unique example. And so we've talked a lot about around what it is, but what it actually is that, with the study team and everybody involved, we came up with basically people with HIV who are diagnosed with a terminal illness volunteer for a research study, and it includes interviews with participants and their next of kin. And it discusses a wide-ranging number of topics about end of life and cure research and perspectives, and Karine will talk a lot more about that. And also getting basic medical history and medications, all of that information for decades before and during kind of the last few months of life, and then also blood samples. And there is, the participants do have to agree to consider a rapid autopsy. And the reason for this is what Andy was talking about, is the need for tissue that we haven't had before, and that it is similar to cancer research to get, the highest quality cells and tissue, which helps the research. And it's been an amazing process, and you can hear it and see it from our first participant. So I'll let Karine talk a little bit more about this one.
Thank you so much. Yes, so the last gift is really has a heart and a soul. I've never seen anything like this. And this slide shows stories that were written in the Positively Aware magazine about 5 years ago, describing their journey of two of their last gift participants who wanted to be publicly known. Both of the participants have actually passed from a neurodegenerative disease called ALS, or amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, by coincidence. So the participant on the left also became a fervent advocate outside of the study for medical aid in dying. So this was completely separate, completely outside of the last gift. But this person was such an full of life and such an advocate for the last gift, and also compassion and dignity at the end of life. A wonderful person. And then the person on the right was the first participant enrolled in the last gift, a true pioneer, surrounded by his next of kin and loved ones. So these are true stories of terminal kindness. Next slide. And so, as Katie mentioned, the study really adopts a 360 degrees. So the participants, their next of kin, loved ones, intimate partners can be referred into the study if they choose. And then also the staff are part of the study. So we ensure everyone is sort of taken care of. So these are some of the themes that emerged from the last gift participant interviews. Participant really saw tremendous opportunity for leaving a legacy. It was almost a sense of existentialism, a lot of hope around science, although we cannot have unrealistic expectation about what this science can do. But we're learning a lot about HIV persistence in different tissue compartments, being treated with dignity at the end of life, self-actualization, and also compassion at the end of life, and the opportunity to really be altruistic in the last few months or weeks or days of life. So amazing stories of altruism in the last gift. Next slide. And this slide shows topics that emerged from our interviews with next of kin and loved ones. So they really wanted to be included in the process and also to be supported and cared for. They also perceive like they received a lot of mental and emotional health in the last few weeks. And some of them had never had to navigate the process of death and dying. So they also get a lot of support from the research team. And also they got to receive a lot of information and also appreciated the professionalism of the research team and clear communication. So we have to say the team provides psychosocial support as well. There's a great team that does that, UCSD. They're amazing. They see the participants. They also visit the next of kin. So the next of kin complete 2 interviews, one before the passing of the participant and then one afterwards. So they do receive support afterwards as well. Next slide. And then we also did focus groups with the research staff, including the rapid research autopsy staff, and they appreciated the tremendous altruism of the participant. They expressed their gratitudes. They also need to be resilient and manage stress, and they're very ethically aware. They also want to make sure that we remain very community engaged. And this is one of the unique programs where the goals of the social behavioral and the ethics in the community are on the same level as the basic science, which is really amazing. Next slide. And for the last 7 years, we've also been doing quality of life measurements with participants in the last gift. And this may not seem like it's a lot, but we actually found that quality of life is preserved in people who are involved in the last gift. And so we think that by having regular contact with the research team and not being so isolated at the end of life really helps the participants maintain their quality of life. So we have to be very cautious on how we interpret those data, but it's telling us that we might be doing something that provides psychosocial benefits to participants. Although we're not, there's no expectation of benefit of being in the study, but these are clues that there's something that's happening with these frequent interactions at the end of life. Next slide. And as Andy mentioned, the community is as part of the study, as the community is really part of the study and helped design the study. So this is actually a framework that was designed by the community on how to prioritize the use of donated biological materials. And also there's an ethical framework around the tissue donation. So values include respect for persons, social and scientific validity, altruism, trustworthiness, stewardship, and community input. And so what we found is participants are incredibly altruistic. So for example, the participant who was passing from ALS that we saw earlier wanted to donate a spinal cord to the field of ALS. And so his wishes became a priority. So we first followed the directives from the participants and then the goals of the research, of course, cure-related research. The altruism extends beyond HIV, which is really amazing. So this is a framework that was developed by community on how to prioritize the use of samples that are derived from the last gift. Next slide. And this slide shows the ethical considerations that were created in close collaboration with the Antiviral Research Center Community Advisory Board. So community members were part of these conversations in the very beginning. And so we have 5 key ethical considerations in terms of protecting autonomy through informed consent, avoiding exploitation, fostering altruism, maintaining a favorable benefit to risk balance, safeguarding vulnerability through patient participant centeredness, and ensuring the acceptance of loved ones, next of kin, and community stakeholders. And the person-centeredness was first. So we have a lot of considerations around putting participant first in the last gift. As you can see on the right, it's very small, but there was a lot of things that were created with the CAB to make sure that this happens. For example, we respect all the advanced care planning directives of the participant, mental health, cultural, spiritual issues, financial and legal issues are acknowledged as well. Quality of life is acknowledged as well. And there was a lot of conversation about how this very study challenged some notions we had about ethics. For example, the topic of vulnerability. So the community, we actually wrote a paper about this, really helped us challenge the notion of what it is, what vulnerability means in the context of clinical research. Next slide. And this is a study brochure that is available on the website. So creating a legacy through HIV research and tissue donation. There's a really good question in the chat. Are there current research sites outside of San Diego? At the moment, the last gift is offered in Southern California, but I think there's greater awareness of the program and greater advocacy. And so, I mean, it would take community advocacy to open a similar study, for example, on the East Coast. We don't want to unduly increase expectations, but I think with community advocacy, if there were to be more advocacy, I'm sure there could be more opportunities to open other sites as well. Next slide. And Katie, all yours.
Yeah, and I know we're running a little short of time, so just very briefly, some of the key things we've learned so far, and this is an ongoing study, so these are very preliminary results, but it really has shown us that the HIV reservoirs, which is how HIV can come back if we stop ARVs, is really different between individual people, which is on the right here. Basically, the amount of virus is very different in different compartments in different areas of the body, and that differs greatly between different people. And the different sites in the body are really important to look at because the blood doesn't reflect everything appropriately, and we do need to know more about the body tissues and the situation there. And then that the latent reservoirs are a lot more active than we realized. Even when people are on ARVs and they're undetectable in blood, there's still, the viral genetic code is still moving from one tissue to another in cells. And so that's not the focus of the talk, so that's a very brief overview, but I think the biggest thing so far for the scientific kind of legacy that we have going is that each last gift participant contributes to a better understanding of HIV reservoirs throughout the body and about how unique and diverse each individual is. All of this is really important for understanding the complications due to HIV in different organs. So it is, focused on kind of helping cure research move forward, but it also helps us understand things like neuroinflammation or inflammation in the brain or different tissues. And it's really important for developing safe and effective cure strategies and clinical trials, because we want to make sure that we know what's going on in all parts of the body and not just what's in the blood, and understanding differences in individual people and how that might need, personalized treatment strategies. And then this is just a link for future. And then we're kind of Corinne, back to you.
Thank you. And these are additional possible projects associated with the last gift, and we would love your thoughts and suggestions, and feel free to contact us as well. But we're thinking right now there's a compassion training that will be happening for research staff in September. We were also thinking about a last wish project associated with the last gift, and then a potential interventions to improve quality of life at the end of life. And then another idea that we had was a memory wall, like a sort of modern day quilt with the piece of the puzzle. That's something we've been thinking about as well. But we would love to hear ideas and suggestions, and definitely we're happy to work with you all to advocate if there's similar, there's desire to have similar programs. Jeff Taylor and I have done a study with long-term survivors. It's a social behavioral study, and we're finding that there would be support for something like this. Next slide. And then an emerging topic that we didn't anticipate was how much the topic of death with dignity and compassion came through our interviews. This has to be completely outside of the study, but some of the participants are wanting to have full autonomy over the end of life process. Next slide. And that's the study I was just mentioning with Jeff Taylor. So we're concluding the social behavioral research study that was conducted with long-term survivors across the US around priorities related to being a long-term survivor. And we're currently analyzing the data. Thank you so much. Next, and this is last kiss is a family. We want to thank all of our study participants, next of kin, loved ones, and all the community members who advocate and are partners in the research alongside the research team. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kareem, Patricia, and Andy, so much for the presentation. We have a few questions I see from the crowd, but before I go there, I want to bring in both Melanie and Jeff and hear their thoughts, kind of start the conversation and maybe add to what our participants are thinking about and talking about, both in the chat and to each other. But just Jeff, Melanie, give your personal feelings of the last gift study, even, particularly spreading in other locations and getting more momentum. And then how do you view this study, like as intrusive, or do you see it as a legacy? And how can it be helpful? We'll start with you, Melanie.
My personal feelings are that this is a legacy, that this needs to be happening, not only in San Diego, it needs to be happening at least at each C4 site in the United States. I have always wanted to donate my body to science. And because I'm HIV positive, that is not allowed. But when I was able to be on a webinar where this was discussed, my mind was just flashing. We've got to get this everywhere, because when the end of the HIV epidemic pillars and plans and everything came out, I knew for myself that U equals U is not enough for those of us already living with HIV. There needs to be a pathway to a cure, and this study, testing tissues in a relatively short period of time post-death, is the key to getting information that we need to develop a cure that would be not just for a handful of people, but across those of us living with HIV. So I consider it to be a legacy.
Thank you, Melanie. And Jeff?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Melanie, and thanks everyone, Andy, Kareen, Katie. When I first heard about this study back when we published it in Positively Aware, when I was editor, I was kind of like, oh, wow. And then I was like, oh, because there's so much to think about in this study, right? It takes place, I think, in the context of a very tender moment in people's lives. I have a friend who just entered hospice, so, it's heavy. And so it's great to know that there's a team of individuals who, are working and are committed to making sure that everything, is done with dignity. And I think it's, and also it's nice to know that there's the quality of life is preserved. At least it's looked like that, there's some kind of indication that the study might be doing something there. And also just a reminder to folks that you can withdraw from a study at any time. So you have the right to do that. So in this study, we hope that wouldn't happen, obviously, but, So you always, as a part of a study, you have the right to withdraw at any time for no reason. You don't have to give any reason. So I just would remind folks of that too. And I think it's reflected in the comments that, are there other sites? What do we need to do to make that happen? And so, I think, I don't know at what point that would be something that to be considered or talked about or discussed. Do we want to wait for more results? I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts on that from this study before, having that kind of discussion, or is it something that should be ongoing now and those conversations be taking place? But I think obviously there's a lot of interest. So from people outside of San Diego and California. So, but
And
yeah.
I don't think you should wait. I think it should be ongoing, and whatever steps we need to start taking to get this launched in our areas, we need to be doing it now.
Absolutely. Thank you for your responses, both Melanie and Jeff. I was going to ask Ms. Scruggs' question, but she has raised her hand here. Where did she go? Ms. Scruggs, are you?
I am here. Hey,
There you
Larry.
are.
Hello, everybody.
Yes.
I am over here in tears. Wow. Thank you. I love this study. I've been following it for years. As I noted in the chat, I was a young adult even before my HIV diagnosis when I decided how important human body donations was to medical research. And so much as I love this study and stuff, I really would like to start the conversation not here, but how do we even just outside of the legacy piece? There's so many folks who are not able to donate for medical education purposes. I think that all 1 million of us can't get in the study. But I think that the laws that are on the books are so old, and do they really qualify for the limitations we have today? So I think the legacy part of the study, there are parts of the study probably could be replicated, even if donation was available in my state. They're probably part of the other parts of the program could be replicated. So I just wanted to say out loud, I think that it's great, it's fabulous, but I think there's another piece. If we can't get the whole, box of candy, what part of candy at the box could we get through advocacy for those who understand they're creating a legacy? But there's also what you're saying when we're talking about cure research, and we're talking about so much, even many of us are not dying from HIV. There are other things that are in combination with the HIV is really what's killing us. It's not necessarily one or the other, it's the combination, and we're missing those opportunities, even if we're only looking at the one study. So I think it's a bigger conversation around replication elements of the study, but also how do we open up the doors to science within our states are making these decisions about donation spaces. So I'll stop there because I'm already started crying. Bye.
Thank you so much, Linda. We always talk about for HIV policy and advocacy, kind of the gravitational pull that needs to accelerate the political will to make these things happen. In this case, this is like accelerating the medical and research will to make that happen. So absolutely. Thank you so much, Andy, Corinne, and Patricia. Did you have any final thoughts or words you wanted to share before we go? And may I please ask you all, if you will, I know I put the website so that people can get more information on the Last Gift study. And if people are interested in signing up, they can enroll there too. There's a page for that. But if you could also add your contact info, so if anyone has any follow-up questions or wants to reach you beyond the webinar, they can do so. But any final thoughts or words or parting shots you want to share with us and the audience? I'll start with you, Corinne.
Thank you so much for inviting us into this space. This was amazing. And we're always open to talk about the Last Gift. So feel free to reach out with us at any time, and we're happy to help advocate for additional opportunities. There are similar programs with cancer on the East Coast. So it would be about making a tweak to also include HIV in the program. So when there's a will, there's a way, and we can advocate for these opportunities with you all.
Thank you for that. Patricia?
Just thank you for inviting me, and it's always amazing to hear everybody's support and realizing that this is such an awesome study and that we do want to be able to replicate it. It is really hard to do because it's kind of a perfect storm of how things all came together. But we are trying to figure out how it could be replicated. And I think leveraging those partnerships with like cancer research and other autopsy programs is key.
Thank you for that. And Andy.
First, I wanted to say I just kind of fell in love with Melanie. Always been in love with Linda anyway, but you know, that the two of you, what you said is exactly what it is about. And that's how we got it through. The IRB didn't want to have anything to do with it, but the community can be a force. And you know, that's what we did. We pushed and pushed and pushed because we believed in it so much. And the one thing that I'll say is regarding implementing it elsewhere, it really takes a lot of work, a lot of preparation. You know, just recently, we had a pathologist that was supposed to, you know, he's the one working with us doing the autopsy, and he wasn't available. I mean, we don't die on our own schedule necessarily. And so you have to have the staff, you have to have the infrastructure, you have to have all of the pieces in place. And it's a really, really daunting task. And we want people to institute this elsewhere, but it is not an easy thing to do. And we need the community help to get that done. And thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Corrine and Patricia. And of course, thank you, Jeff and Melanie, for being a part of this important conversation.
By the way, everybody, wish a happy birthday to Patricia Riggs. It's her birthday today.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
Love you, Katie.
Happy birthday.
Yes, thank you so much. Happy birthday. All right.
Happy birthday.
Hey, how is everyone feeling? By a show of hands, eyes, smiles, however you want to measure, how are you feeling? We're still breathing, right? Yes, we are. Again, if you need at any point during the Q&A to check out our respite room with Jotina, it's happening during the Q&As. You can just pop in there. I've also am adding NAMI services, resources as well. You can find free support, education, and just support groups in your area by chatting or calling any of those numbers in the chat. So we're going to bring back Miss Lapina, who's going to help us get centered, recentered again with her breathing techniques and keeping us whole. Thank you, Lapina, so much for what you do. And while Lapina's getting ready, I just want to say I see Roy Hayes' face. Just makes me smile.
Thank you, Larry.
Roy has certainly been energizing me too, as everyone has. This is just a wonderful community that we all are a part of. So, and I want to say today, you know, I just want to stop for a moment and say, you know, there have been so many times in my life that have taken my breath away. And that's why today I wanted to present to everyone just the importance of the breath that houses us, keeps us, sustains us, nourishes us, fills us, completes us, shocks us at times. You know, the breath is so important. The breath is life itself. It enters when we begin, and it passes with us as we move on to our next stage. So I honor the breath, I honor life, And I honor the Reunion Project for bringing this and allowing me to share and express today with everyone. So with that, I'll ask the question again. Is everyone still breathing?
Yes.
Nodded ahead. So, but are we breathing joyfully? Let's breathe in through our nose with fullness of life, bringing it in, lifting those shoulders with it, and letting it out, slowly feeling. The breath wants to feel you again. So as we've done today, lift those hands again so that you can feel you, your breath, pure life source. Run it across your fingers. Blow it in the air. This is breath. Breath says to us, I am alive. Breath says to us, I am present. Breath says to us, I will be with you. Moments that take our breaths away happens. Moments of joy that lift us up, our breath is there with us. Moments of comfort and moments of relief. The breath is housed there with us. It does so much, and yet it is so quiet. We don't even know that it circulates continuously through us, nourishing each and every part of us, filling us. So let's stop for a moment and keep breathing. And let's just sit in that, resting our feet again on those sandy shores or a puff of clouds, resting our whole body just in stillness. And let's just breathe in and out. As we do that, we can tap one more time over areas, our heart center. We can tap so that we know that we feel the essence of life. Bring it up our arms, down through our hands. Again, our hands do so much. Let's just thank those hands. Let's just give honor to those hands. Rub them. And I want to thank, I wore the colors again. We speak of the colors that I asked to bring into your heart center. But I want to give honor to a person like Gilbert Baker, who brought those colors to life through the pride flag, the purple, the color of spirit, blue, the color of harmony, green, the color of nature, yellow, the color of sunshine, orange, the color of healing, and red, the color of life. For so many who have passed and transitioned, as Andy said, I think that bright light that I asked you to bring in today, those were many of our ancestors who came in to be with us, to speak to us, to say, never forgotten, never not here, always with us. They are some of our breath that continues to push us forward to do the things that we, as we be here, stand here, be here breathing, are still able to accomplish. So I know that I am in this present moment because I breathe. So I want you for a moment in your subtle breath to just close your eyes. And we talked about flowers today. Close your eyes, and as you sit there and breathe, I want you to bring the most special, wonderful flower. One is that your favorite, or any flower, into your presence, into your third eye, and let it rest in your third eye, carrying it to your heart, and just breathe for a moment. Beautiful flowers. There are so many flowers, just like so many specks of air. I see fields of flowers. You may have a special one. Breathing in and out, raising those shoulders up, roll them back. Breathing in and out once again. And now, what do we do with the breath? The breath loves to dance. So stomp those feet, wave those hands, wave to everyone, and yes, we breathe. Put those hands together. That applause is for you and for everyone that's on this today and for those that aren't. To Breath to Life, thank you for allowing me to come in and share a wonderful piece. Me and my breath, we do great things together.
Thank you, Lapina, again for that refresher. Oh, just feel so at ease when I hear your voice. I think I'm programmed now. Hope everyone else is doing well. As we are 2/3 through our webinar today. So the entire webinar today is about end of life planning or end of life. And talking about the end of life and planning for it is never easy. It's as human as it is to live, is to die. And being prepared for that conversation is part of what I'm hoping that these sessions are doing. Certainly with the panelists that we've had so far and providing the insight, as well as the resources to have the conversation and to plan ahead when possible, will make these transitions far more bearable. So for our final session today segment of this webinar, we're going to talk about contemplating end of life and transitioning planning. And to lead us in this conversation are our two panelists, Noreen Riza, who goes by she, her pronouns, is a staff attorney at Legal Counsel for Health Justice in Chicago, Illinois, where she works in the HIV and AIDS program. Legal Counsel for Health Justice uses power of the law to secure dignity, opportunity, and well-being for people facing barriers due to illness or disability. Her work focuses on building community-driven medical legal partnership with Legal Counsel's partner, Christian Community Health Center. And they serve clients on the far south side of Chicago and the south suburbs as well, facing a variety of health-harming legal concerns, which we know exist. And joining Noreen will be Jam Chen. Jam is an artist, community builder, and death care worker based on Ohlone land, on Ohlone land in San Francisco, with ancestral roots in Toisun, China. I hope I pronounced all that correctly. Thank you. As a program coordinator for TGI Aging Services at San Francisco AIDS Foundation, they integrate collective reflection and skill building, somatic movement, and art practice to facilitate connection and healing. From Jam's background in public health, aging services, and queer trans community building, their vision for liberation includes self-determination for all peoples, including a free Palestine. Thank you so much for joining us, Jam and Noreen.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm going to go ahead and share my slides. One moment. It looks like I don't have access to share screen. Would anyone be able to give me those privileges?
You should now, Jam.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you are.
All right. Thank you again for the introduction and to the Reunion Project for inviting me to speak about my death work today. It's been really incredible to hear all the stories and perspectives throughout the webinar today, and just really impressed at the variety of perspectives that you all have been able to bring on in turning towards what can be a really fraught and hard topic to kind of tackle. Again, my name is Jam. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm a death doula, and I work in San Francisco / Ohlone land. I work at San Francisco AIDS Foundation in the Aging Services Department, primarily with trans, genderqueer, and intersex elders and older adults. A lot of my programming and events are non-specific to status, so I'm going to be speaking more broadly to my work with LGBTQ older adults and elders in San Francisco. So since we're not able to gather in person and we're joining each other virtually, I wanted to take a moment to just ritualize my sharing for today and ground us in a moment of honor and gratitude for the long lineages of death workers who come before me. I've heard a lot of feedback like, oh, death doula seems like a newer term, or it seems like it's something that's rising in popularity now, even though this work is really anything but new and unique. It's an ancient form of community care, and especially where state-sanctioned death is present and oppression is present, death care has always been a necessary form of turning towards community and providing as much autonomy and dignity in death as possible in the face of state-sanctioned death and violence. So I want to just quickly name like the queer and trans elders who have held so much space for death in their lifetimes, especially living through the height of the AIDS epidemic and tending to so many loved ones and community through diagnoses, through disability, through illness and death. And then also to just honor this moment, this current historical moment where genocide and state-sanctioned death is happening all across the world, to really just center that death work is liberation work. And my death work is also a prayer for an end to genocide everywhere, for free Palestine, Congo, Sudan, and to really say that like autonomy and dignity in death are impossible under oppression. And this is kind of the guiding framework that informs a lot of the context for my death work and my spirituality and my practice, and also my vision of what a liberated death looks like for everyone, which is the death that we deserve, and also the life that we deserve, which is a liberated life. So I'm gonna go into a quick definition of what is a death doula. Kind of broadly, a death doula is someone who supports and accompanies around the transition of death. I kind of use an expansive definition of death to mean quite literally the physical death, but also endings that happen while we might still be physically alive. So a lot of people that I work with might be talking about like the death of a friend or the loss of housing or the loss of connection to homeland when they immigrate or are a refugee here. And so a lot of that grief kind of looks the same. Of course, it takes on different forms depending on like the circumstances and context of the ending or the death or the transition. But a lot of the grief also kind of parallels and mirrors each other. And so a lot of the people I work with like aren't necessarily facing like a terminal diagnosis, but are practicing grieving and turning towards like the world of death and endings and release. Support under a death doula could span the spiritual, the emotional, the physical, and the logistical. I know like logistical might be like paperwork and advanced care planning. I don't do as much of that. I know Noreen is going to speak a little bit more to like some of the paperwork. A lot of my work kind of spans more of the spiritual components of contemplating the end and working through grief, and coming together in community around those things. I want to just start by posing this question for everyone to think about, which is, what shapes a person's relationship to death? I think of death and using the word specifically relationship, because I think death can often kind of be treated like a human being or a living being of its own when we think about how we relate to it, how we set boundaries with it, how we met it, whether we had safety and consent when we were engaging with death. I also use the word relationship as kind of a more neutral word, as something neither inherently good nor bad. I think a lot of people have real negative and traumatic experiences with death because they met death when they were really young and again and again and again, and didn't have the safety or time or slowness to kind of process and work through what that relationship was, or to consider how they might just be mindful of their own like agency in engaging with death. I know that's definitely true for a lot of the queer and trans elders I work with, is like from the age of 18 or younger, they were burying friends over and over and over again and didn't really have time to like take a step back or process. And so this grief compounded over time. And a lot of them are now in their 50s and 60s and have a little bit more space and slowness to kind of like revisit their relationships to death. And that's where a lot of like the activation and like fear comes in, where they're able to be in their bodies again in relationship to death and really work through what this lifelong relationship has meant to them. And so this is kind of just a question to set the framework for how we're engaging. I know a lot of death doula movements will kind of use like death positivity as a term to be like, oh, we can all be thinking about death and how can we use death and engaging with death to re-engage with life and how we want to live. But I think that kind of imposing or prescribing a positivity to death feels a little ahistorical and apolitical to me, because there are a lot of just very legitimate reasons why death is such a fraught topic and theme for so many marginalized people. I want to share a little bit of context so we're just on the same page about like necropolitics. The root necro means death. So death politics as kind of a backdrop for how people are in relationship to death, especially queer and trans community in general and older adults and elders. I'm going to share some theory from Achille Mbembe, who is a Cameroonian historian and political theorist. And he was the one who originally coined the term necropolitics. So a lot of this is kind of just like providing some words and framework that summarize or lay out patterns for like what people have kind of been sharing in stories throughout today. You know, for example, talking about death due to overdose and how that happens on a systemic level, or death due to HIV/AIDS and how that has happened on a systemic level. So necropolitics is basically systemic power to control who lives and how they live, who dies and how they die, and how people grieve. Death world describes systemic conditions where people who do survive and aren't necessarily dying or killed are subjected to live in ongoing proximity to death. To give some classic historical examples, I bring up the AIDS epidemic and specifically the height of it, where people were dying very preventable deaths and where blood was on the hands of the state for systemic neglect, where the resources and tools to prevent these deaths were within reach and yet not utilized. And so a lot of these people were dying deaths where death politics were implicated and responsible. So on the image on the left, we have an image from the 1988 seize control of the FDA action, where activists demanded that they sped up research, development, and approval of drugs for AIDS. I find this quote and this jacket and this photo really powerful. It's from David Wojnarowicz in 1988, where he said, "If I die of AIDS, forget burial, just drop my body on the steps of the FDA." We also see a bunch of political funerals at the time, like the Ashes Action, where people threw the ashes of their loved ones on the steps of the White House, kind of again pointing to how these were preventable deaths and how death politics were at play in the deaths of all these community members. I think this quote is really powerful, and all the political funerals where this person is basically saying like, my death is political, it is a result of state neglect, and please use what's left of my blood and bones and flesh to show the state the result of their actions so they can't turn away, so they must look at it. On the right, we have an image from the Compton's cafeteria riot in 1966. So as we're, you know, in the first week of Pride Month, and we ground ourselves in Pride being a riot that was started by trans women of color, Black trans women, Latina trans women, against police brutality and the criminalization of trans people and specifically trans women. I want to just bring up this historical moment to show how, you know, if the state is not creating conditions that are killing people, they're creating conditions where they might be physically alive, but unable to access a lot of the things that make life sacred. So for example, we're in the year 2024 now, and we have 595 pieces of anti-trans legislation still. that may not be like explicitly or quickly killing trans people, but are denying people of life-saving healthcare and treatment and criminalizing people and their families who are supporting trans people and trans youth, legislating things like access to bathrooms. And so to just think about the term death worlds and what that means for the conditions of living that the state might be creating, even while people are physically alive. You know, we also talk about, I think someone mentioned earlier, like death by suicide, and how like the rates of suicide attempt and completed suicides are also really, really high for trans people. And so how, even if it's not like an acute or punctuated instance of anti-trans violence that kills someone, there are all these ways that legislation and systemic conditions are created that deprive someone of the things that make their life worth living. So I just want to include these examples in this theory as kind of a framework and backdrop for how politics kind of shapes people's personal relationships with death, and how you know, death can be engaged on a personal level, but it's also like there are all these layers to like how it happens in community, how it happens within your state, the role of the federal government in terms of the legislation or the neglect, all these different forces at play that shape our own personal relationships to death, and that make it very natural for people to have really traumatic relationships to death, and to not want to engage with it or to be fearful of it. This slide is about contemplating liberated death, you know, against this backdrop of necropolitics that we just talked about. I know in a lot of death doula spaces, people will be like, what is a good death to you? Because that varies from person to person. You know, some people might want to be as pain-free as possible. Others would like to be in a hospital. Others would like to be at home with family. And I'd like to shift away a little bit from like just the positive or negative to contemplating what a liberated death looks like, where different systems of oppression and death politics are at play, shaping the lives we get access to and also the deaths we get access to. So to think a little bit about autonomy and having choices, consent, and safety, many which are not necessarily within reach for a lot of queer and trans older people, in kind of talking to, holding reflection circles with the trans elders that I work with, a lot of them kind of talked about like how wild it is to even think about the possibility of dying from old age rather than like due to acute violence, anti-trans violence, anti-Black violence, etc. Others talk about like what it means to die under a roof at all, to be in a home that they consider to be safe. Others who are immigrants or seeking asylum here have talked about what it would be like to have the choice to, after they die, be returned to their homeland, and return to the land in their homeland with the family there, with their community there. Others have talked about like simply having the guarantee, like as a trans woman, to know that they will be dressed as a woman and presented as a woman, to be memorialized by the name that they went by in life, to be able to wear this lipstick and this outfit. And then others talk about, you know, being cared for by chosen family if they're no longer able to care for themselves or they're no longer cognitively able to make healthcare decisions, to make sure that goes to someone they really trust, even if that's not necessarily biological family or anyone they're in a legal relationship with, because a lot of these things aren't necessarily guarantees for queer and trans community. For justice, we talk about untangling death and injustice. So this really is pointing to like necropolitics and how death politics shapes a lot of the lives and deaths that we get access to. Thinking about slogans like every overdose death is a policy failure, again, where the state has tools and resources at its disposal to be able to prevent these deaths, but where people aren't getting the resources they need, or they're stigmatized in these really systemic ways. And so they're dying as a result of injustice. Also thinking about silence equals death, the slogan for the HIV/AIDS movement, and the government complicity in neglect, or, you know, even in 2024, seeing like big federal cuts to HIV/AIDS funding. The last thing is neutralizing death. So reframing death as not a failure, especially if we're able to untangle the death and injustice. I think I was talking to Mark King actually in a previous conversation, and he was mentioning like long-term survivors orienting so much of identity around survival. And how the kind of counterpart is that death is not a failure. It's a thing that happens to all of us, you know, regardless of what kind of healthcare we have access to, regardless of how illness or disability might progress, like death is always the result and it is not a failure. The other thing that kind of has to do with expanding our view and definition of death is that death is neither inherently good nor bad, but valued based on the meaning it creates. I kind of posed this bullet point to pose the question of whether there can be some comfort we might find in death as well as like not the ultimate evil, you know, but something that happens all around us in nature, not just to humans, but to birds, to plants, to flowers. And then also expanding our view of what death is as an ending. Like there may be older versions of ourselves that end or die if that language resonates. There might be old habits that die. There may be systems of oppression that die. And so kind of expanding this definition of death to prompt whether there is like growth and good that also comes out of death sometimes, if we may kind of neutralize this definition of how we hold death within our lives and within the ecosystem of this world and society. I know that like neutralizing death may not always feel possible, especially where death happens in all these really traumatic and unjust ways for many different communities. And so it's completely okay if that language doesn't resonate. But this is just another way of thinking that has helped me and that I know has kind of helped zoom out for some of the people that I work with. I'm going to share a little bit now specifically about like programmatic death work within TGI Aging Services at my organization. So we have facilitated different reflection circles with our Trans Life Support Group and the Black Brothers Esteem Support Group. We also do one-off workshops and events. So this might be different somatic practices like Reiki healing sessions, things around like singing and freeing our voice. We did a block print workshop with lino cut that contemplated this idea of legacy. And so you can see 2 pieces of artwork that our community members created here on the side. And then I also do one-on-one support sessions with people. I think it's powerful doing one-on-one support sessions within the context of a greater org, where there are a lot of different resources that I can automatically connect people with. Because peer support and like having community is, I think, really important to supplement with like one-on-one support or therapy or anything like that. This is a high-level summary of who comprises the community members and groups that I work with. So it's mixed status HIV positive and negative, majority LGBTQ+, majority ages 50+, and then majority people of the global majority, which is, I would say, mostly Black and Latine individuals are in the groups. So this is my last slide before I turn it over to Noreen, who's going to go more in depth about end-of-life planning and documentation. But I wanted to share just some of the themes that emerge when I've worked with LGBTQ, older adults and elders in my groups. The first thing is spiritual grounding. So getting to think about like presence for our death and our transitions. That might include things like what we want to feel like on the last day of our life, what music we might want playing, what meal we'd really want to nourish with as our last meal, where we'd like to be, how we'd like to say our goodbyes, or if we'd like to say our goodbyes, what might feel appropriate or fitting for like a memorial or celebration of life. And I think more broadly than like the individual spiritual grounding, thinking about like deaths more specifically, I think a lot of the spiritual grounding is about being in connection again to ourselves and our souls and our community and our land. And again, kind of zooming out beyond the world in the here and now and beyond our finite lives. We do altar building as a spiritual practice, so bringing in the different elements, earth, wind, fire, and water into our altars to remember that we are, a reflection of everything that's happening in the land and nature around us. Bringing in photos of trans ancestors. I know this photo is a little backlit, but there are framed photos of 5 different trans ancestors who had passed in the past 3 years that are framed on that altar that we created for Dia de los Muertos in 2023. And so really just grounding us again in the ancestors and the stories and the lives and the spirits of all the people we loved who came before us and that inform how we move through the world even today. I'll also talk a little bit about co-regulating in community and why, even when I'm doing one-on-one support sessions, it's really incredible seeing people connect in community and in peer spaces, even more so than that one-on-one support, is that things, especially around death, become so much bigger and scarier when we can't say the things out loud that are weighing on our spirits and souls and hearts. And so getting to come together and be able to say those things out loud can be such a balm for that isolation and that loneliness. I also think about like who gets access to grief, even though a lot of the Black and Latine, queer and trans people I work with have had so much loss and death and ending within their lives. A lot of them really haven't been afforded the privilege of being able to like fully grieve and be soft in their grief in kind of group and public spaces. And so seeing people who would talk about a loss of a loved one they experienced 20 years ago and to be able to cry in a group setting and ask to be held in this way was just very moving and powerful. Yeah, just especially because different expressions of grief can be so withheld from different community, especially Black and Indigenous community. And so, yeah, that was something that I just noticed and that transpired within the group setting that was really beautiful to watch, just like more than just me co-facilitating, seeing each other hold each other in that grief and in that softness that can often feel kind of taboo was a really beautiful thing. I also think like play and experimentation is a big part of co-regulating in community, like playing with ideas and theories about what happens and like about what happens in the universe, about what happens to our spirits, about what happens to our bodies. I've seen bring people great comfort. I remember I was with Black Brothers Esteem, and they're a group of mostly HIV positive, older Black men. And they got really into this conversation about reincarnation and kind of playing around with different ideas about reincarnation and what happens when souls like re-enter the earth in the form of different people. And I remember someone saying like, it would be really comforting actually to know that like the soul of James Baldwin and Zora Neale Hurston were among us on this earth again. And I saw the energy kind of shift in the room and this comfort kind of wash over the crowd where people were able to like think up ideas about spirituality and about the broader universe beyond the here and now that they might not have thought of on their own, but that brought a lot of comfort once they heard someone else say that out loud. And so really creating a practice where people can come together and regulate in each other's stories and ideas and big questions has been a big goal of this exploration with these reflection circles. The last thing I'll kind of mention with safety planning that Noreen will get more into is within the context of necropolitics and oppression and all these systems at play that rob our autonomy as marginalized peoples, this question of safety planning is how do we use every single tool and resource at our disposal to claim agency over the parts of life and death that are within reach? Safety planning is not just important for like, queer and trans elders or people at the very, very end of their life who have a terminal diagnosis. But I think it's really important for anyone who may be at risk of institutionalization, For a lot of the queer and trans elders I work with, there's so much medical trauma and experiences with medical abuse that the idea of being institutionalized when they're older and maybe like cognitively disabled is extremely terrifying to think about being powerless in that way. And if you don't have anyone appointed necessarily, it could get just really tricky with like either appointing a conservator or like resorting to legal or blood relationships that may not be safe. And so what would it look like to create this documentation where you could say, I trust this person and I've talked to them about exactly how I want my body touched or cared for. And I know that that's sorted out while I'm still cognitively able to make those decisions. You also see safety planning and advanced care planning utilized as a suicide care resource as well for people who might be at risk of being 5150'd, again, where there may be medical trauma or different like medical abuse when it comes to being institutionalized or the idea of it. And so this is really just another tool for safety planning that can be utilized to ensure that one has as much bodily autonomy as possible. So I will close there. There will be more time for Q&A at the end, but for now I will turn it over to Noreen to talk a little bit more about advanced care planning.
Thank you so much, Jim, for that really wonderful presentation. And I will be sharing my slides now as well. If you give me one moment to do that. And while I'm figuring out how to do that, I will just want to lift up one thing that Jem said in their presentation about necropolitics and just the different ways that people experience oppression, both in life, but also in death in the process of dying. And I want to just acknowledge that, of course, as an attorney, we recognize that the law has been and is still often used as a tool of that oppression. And so the tools that I'm sharing today will hopefully be, I'm intending to share them as a way of hoping to provide folks with just a means by which you can understand ways that you have power to take control of your own circumstances. And I hope that is helpful to everyone. I'm I'm sorry, I'm having it's just the issue of trying to get to the point where I can start my slideshow. And I will figure that out. I just can't see anything. Okay, there we go. Okay, so hopefully you can all see this in full screen format. And so what we'll be doing, what I'll be talking about right now is just a variety of different types of legal documentation that you can have that address different circumstances and contexts when it comes to planning ahead for medical emergencies, planning for end-of-life medical care, transitioning, and also estate planning. So what that means is like how you want your matters, your possessions, your assets to be dealt with after you're no longer with us. So just as a general way of starting, why is transition planning important? There are very practical concerns that make it important, the ability to protect your dependents. That includes even if you have pets, control over your personal and financial affairs after you no longer able to exercise that control yourself, that you can still put that authority in the hands of people that you trust to make those decisions in your best interest. The same goes for your physical possessions and making sure that those go to the people that you want them to be shared with in the way that you want that to happen, when you want that to happen. And aside from the practical, it just provides comfort, hopefully to you and to your loved ones, that they can celebrate your life more in your passing, and act out your wishes without the burden of any financial confusion or red tape or bureaucratic bureaucratic difficulties and violence. So what we'll first talk about are just medical emergencies and how you can plan for any future kind of medical situation. I would say that one of the major ways that you can address being prepared for medical emergencies is having powers of attorney in place. So what is a power of attorney? A power of attorney is a legal document that lets you name somebody you trust to manage your affairs in the event you're unable to do so yourself. So that would mean if you are incapacitated in a moment due to an illness, or if you, you know, as many people age, for instance, maybe their mental capacity is not as strong as it used to be. You may reach a point where you are don't necessarily have the cognitive capacity to make your own decisions on your own. That would be a context where maybe having a power of attorney in place would be helpful. What's important about powers of attorney as far as when you create them is that when you create a power of attorney, you do actually have to be legally competent and understand what you are doing at the time you make those arrangements. So that's why we call it planning ahead, because it really is something that you would want to have in place before, or just in case anything might happen. I say power of attorney. You may also hear power of attorney called an agent. I also use agent frequently. Sometimes people call them proxies or surrogates. So really can be many different terms can be used to describe the same arrangement. And powers of attorney can go into effect immediately or only after you, you know, insert some triggering event into the document. And should say as a general preface, these types of documents and most documents I'm going to talk about right now are governed by state law. So to know about the granular details and specifics of what's possible in your state or what might be required, you would have to refer to, if you're living in the US, the state that you live in. If you're outside the US, you know, what law covers the jurisdiction that you live in. But these are general principles that are applicable across these lines. So general things to think about when choosing an agent, and we're going to talk about healthcare and property power of attorneys, but I would say these considerations apply to both. Your agent should be somebody that's willing to take on the responsibility. You know, they may not have to do anything at all, you know, at the very beginning of becoming your agent, but if, you know, the situation arises where they do have to start acting in that capacity and making decisions on your behalf, they should be, you know, prepared to take on that level of responsibility and that time and effort and, you know, sometimes the emotional labor that may require of them. It should be somebody that is knowledgeable about your health and your financial situation. If they're not knowledgeable, it should be somebody that you trust you can share this information with in confidence. Practically speaking, it's helpful if they live near you. So in case they are needed, they're physically available to step in. And then depending on your state law, you may be able to name a backup agent or maybe more than one agent at once. And then you would want to also consider if your state law has any restrictions on who can serve as an agent. For example, there may be some states where somebody who has like a felony conviction may not be allowed to serve as a property power of attorney or something like that. I've seen that happen in the context of guardianship. So it's just something you would want to keep in mind as making sure that you don't run into that obstacle in choosing an agent. So next slide. Power of attorneys for healthcare is one type of power of attorney. A healthcare agent or healthcare power of attorney is someone that would be appointed to make decisions, healthcare decisions for you if you cannot make them yourself. That includes things like consent to medications, admission to a nursing home, access to your medical records. You can make this grant of authority really broad to cover any medical situation that you want your agent to be able to just act generally in your interests. Or you can make it very specific if you know that are things you don't want an agent to have authority over, or types of treatment or courses of treatment that you would not consent to if you were there to able to make your own decision at the time. That can be memorialized in your power of attorney for your agent to follow as well. In general, these types of documents most of the time need to have some kind of witnessing, and sometimes notarization. That depends on your state. And then once you create a power of attorney document, you would want to make sure that relevant people have access to it. So your agent should have a copy, of course. Your medical providers, if you have like a regular doctor clinic you go to, and then if there are other people that you want to have a copy just for safety and good measure, you can provide multiple copies to these other parties. So in general, what would you want your healthcare power of attorney to really know? Again, this is, going back to what John was saying about thinking about like spiritual concerns around life transition or end of life care, or your approach to life sustaining treatment. Like, how important is it to you to prolong your life as long as possible versus minimizing any physical suffering? Or where you would want to be if you were in a situation where you may be like nearing the end of your life. Would you want that to be at your home or in a hospital or at hospice? Do you have any kind of cultural, religious, or spiritual concerns that you want to make sure are respected, that your agent should know about? These are all considerations that your agent should be familiar with, and that you can sometimes write into your power of attorney documentation, so it's on paper what your wishes are. And the point of these documents is so that, you may not be able to voice those wishes yourself anymore, but they have been put out, put into the world, put onto this legal documentation, so that the person who is carrying out your wishes knows what they are and is able to use their judgment to understand what you would have wanted in the same situation or similar situation. We're going to talk about some of these things in more detail in a moment, but if there's nobody that you trust to be your agent, you can still create written guidance that is documented in your medical charts, and there are other advanced directives you can create that don't require having an agent in place. So we'll get to those as well.
Actually,
Power of attorney for property is very similar in nature to what we just discussed regarding powers of attorney for healthcare. The only difference is that we're talking now about financial matters and things like your house, your accounts, assets, like physical property, like a car, benefits like retirement benefits or pensions. So it would be handling your financial affairs. You'd still be doing kind of the same process of naming an agent.
Doreen,
Raised hand? Yes.
hi, apologies, I hate to cut you off, but I wanted to share, we are like at time.
Oh, okay.
And I apologize because I know it's important information and a lot of people are going to start logging off soon. So I didn't want to have you talking to an empty room, virtual room.
No
as
problem.
people
Sorry, I
go.
was in full
How-
screen.
However, we are going to make this recording available hopefully tomorrow, and we will include all of your slides for everyone who registered in attendance, and of course everyone that's can come to our website at reunionproject.net to get the resources. And if you could, please put your email in the chat so that if people have questions, especially after seeing your full presentation on the recording, they will be able to contact you directly. Apologies and thank you so much.
That is no problem. I'll put it in the chat right now.
Thank you. And I want to thank everyone for attending, for joining, those who are still here. Before we go, I want to bring actually two things. I want to bring Jotina back to the spotlight just to give us some closing respite words for all of our participants after this very heavy and involved conversation. And while we're waiting for Jotina to be spotlighted, I just wanted to highlight that the Reunion Project is releasing our next round of mini grant opportunities for peer-led town hall expansion projects for 2024. Check your inboxes in the next few days. It'll be released and for RFP for mini grant, again, aimed at empowering communities to develop and host their own peer-led town hall community meeting. And we'll have recipients from the previous round who will share their experiences of both developing their proposal and, of course, doing their event. I also wanted to highlight that our next toolkit series is coming Wednesday, July 17th, and it will be centered around heterosexual men living with HIV. And our next 2-day peer-led regional town hall will occur in Denver. The planning for with the host committee members started literally this week, and we'll be doing planning and developing that program. It's coming at the end of August. Well, not quite the end of August, but August 23rd and 24th. So if you are in Colorado, certainly in the Denver area, near the end of August, we hope to see you there. But before we go, I definitely want to hear from Jotina and just kind of share, I guess based on the people who have come and shared space with you in the breakout space and maybe some thoughts and mindfulness that people can take with them after this webinar.
Yes, thank you so much. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Can you all see me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I cannot see you all, and so I surrender to the mercy of technology. My computer is doing something over here. Thank you so much, Larry. Thank you so much, Wahida. And for all of you all showing up in this space today, and every person that presented and shared. I was over here taking notes feverishly. But I would like to just ground us in a collective communal breath to bring in what we've shared and some final affirmations. But before we do that, let's engage in my favorite type of breath work to move some energy. As we've sat through a lot, we've heard a lot, and I offer validation around the courage that it takes to show up in these spaces, whether your camera is on or off, right? The courage that it takes to feel into your heart and be in your body in these spaces and carry the duality or the multiple dimensions of what it means to survive and for some thrive with HIV, and then also be on the front line of advocating and caregiving and holding the pains and the weight and the heaviness of your griefs while also holding the state of this world that we live in and the disparities and the injustices that we all acknowledge exist and that we are living through. This is big work, you all, and the gravity of this work requires us to remember ourselves as we remember others and our loved ones and those that have gone before us in this great big world and big work. So if you would with me, right where you are, if you will just kind of free your hands, relax the space between your shoulders and your ears, and smile. Yeah, just smile for a moment. I want you to feel the rise of your cheeks, feel your ears rise, feel the muscles in your face start to contort and change. Take a deep breath in. Deep, deep breath. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold the breath at the top. Open your mouth. Throw your head back. Stick your tongue out. Throw your hands up. And exhale, shaking the hands all the way down. Ah. One more time. Deep inhale. Fill the body up with air. 2, 3, 4. Hold the breath at the top. Grab hold of something that resonated with you today. Throw the head back, stick the tongue out, throw the hands up. Shake it out. Yeah. Yeah, release that energy. I offer you some affirmations. As I say these affirmations, just listen for what resonates with you as you return to the natural rhythm of your breath. I permit myself to grieve and to fully feel all of my emotions. I'm patient with myself as I navigate the grieving process. My loved one's memory lives on in my heart as our shared memory. It is okay for me to feel sadness and also feel joy. I am worthy of love. I am worthy of compassion. And I'm worthy of support at every stage of my life. And I am surrounded by love and supported, even in my darkest moments. And the centering mantra that I will ground us in and leave us with is, the world is well when I am well. I will take good care of myself. I'll say that again. The world is well when I am well. I will take good care of myself. It's my hope and my prayer that you would take good care as you continue to forge forward. Thank you all.
And thank you, Jotina. Thank you, everyone. I will just leave those words to follow. Take care of yourself, take care of your loved ones. Be safe and have a wonderful week and weekend.